Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. I'm going to give it just a few minutes while people log in and let me know if I have sound. I don't have a 10-year-old around here to help me run the tech stuff. Let me know if we're getting sound. Go through a couple of quick howdies. Howdy, Andrew. Good to see you. Jones. Oh, let's get it. Howdy. Rob. Howdy. Thank you guys for showing up. I appreciate it. First rent checks came in. Congratulations. I really enjoy the first week of the month. It's like my bank account becomes an Etch-a-Sketch. Rent comes in, mortgage goes out. Rent comes in, mortgage goes out. And it just kind of balances around. And it's an interesting week. So congratulations on your first rent checks. Larry, howdy. Okay, good. Good, we got sound. So the purpose of this video, of course, it's a live stream. It should be nice and short. And I'm going to answer all the questions until they stop coming in. But I wanted to start with, while people are thinking of the questions that you want to write in the comments, how can we make work optional? A lot of people are familiar with the FIRE community, financial independence, retire early. I focused on it for a long time, absorbed a ton of content, and there was Mr. Money Mustache and Paula Pants Afford Anything. And there were some great channels that really covered financial independence, retire early. And there's a couple of things in the FIRE movement that I like, and then there's some things that I don't like. Financial independence to me was really important. I wanted to find a source of income that didn't rely on me selling my life 1 hour at a time. And, I've talked about this. If you're new to my channel, I'll give you just a really quick recap. After Desert Storm, the Marine Corps downsized. In 2008, I was a police officer that got laid off because during a recession, police department shrank. I have ran a trucking company, and my ex emptied out the wages and taxes account, so I had to shut down the business. So my sources of income kept being taken away. So I looked into financial independence, retire early is a catchy name, and financial independence is key. If we can have money coming in that we don't have to sell our lives for 1 hour at a time, then we have that independence. And it makes work optional. If you have enough money coming in from sources that you don't have to work for, then you can actually choose to do any job you want. And the money doesn't matter. I reached financial independence in 2018. So I could have stopped working almost, coming up on 4 years ago now. And I'm a moment of transparency. My friends have a sick sense of humor. Most of my friends are veterans. And veterans, as a coping mechanism, we usually come up with sarcasm. And so if you don't have a sense of humor, you might not understand what I'm about to say. But I have a friend who's retiring soon, less than a year. And my friends have taken out a pool on how long he lasts after he retires. My problem with the financial independence retire early part is if you retire early, most of the statistics from law enforcement and studies on people who retire is that the average person lasts about 2 to 4 years, lives 2 to 4 years after they retire. So many people focus on not working that once we don't have to work, they don't have anything in their life that keeps them active. So like I said, sick sense of humor. There's a pool going on how long my friend lasts. My goal is to educate him on how to fill his calendar with things that are going to keep him active so that he actually enjoys his retirement. So the financial independence, yes, I'm on board with. Retire early, I'm not sure I'm even going to retire late. I still work 50 to 60 hours a week. I run a truck driving school. I run a nonprofit that helps people find non-driving jobs. And I spend a lot of time trying to share content to drag people that are watching, kicking and screaming into their own version of financial freedom. At least here, I'm finding people who are trying to do that. One of the really frustrating things about figuring out financial freedom and understanding how simple the math is to make work optional is then encountering most of the people that I run into on a daily basis, people that work for me, people that I work with, who are basically planning on working until they die. And a lot of people talk about developing a savings rate, and they will contribute to a Roth or a 401k or some kind of retirement plan where it's automated, so you're not thinking about it, so it's the easiest way to do it. Or more importantly, it comes out before you see the money. If you have the money and then you have to physically invest it, for some people that's harder. But if it's out of your check before you have it, that's a little easier. But many companies will match 3, 5, or sometimes even more %. So people should be putting in the match. I hate the idea of money trapped in a retirement account but I still contribute for the match. Some people don't have a retirement plan that they contribute to at all. I have employees who have access to ours that we developed for our company who don't contribute. And imagine that, working with me and hearing me talk all the time and then still not contributing at least for the match. And then they don't have any other form of investing going on either. So they're never on path to make work optional, even at the point where they hit so security and they hope it's still there. My goal is if we can get more people to make work optional, then people can work jobs that they want to do instead of jobs they have to do for money. And then I think the world's just going to be a better place. And I do hear people say things, I love my job. And I've heard people say, I love my job so much I would do it for free. And that's not me. I would not do any job for free. I do volunteer and I do try to share content. And I'm not trying to make money doing it. I don't have a course or a book or anything like that. I may someday, but not today. But when we can find a way to put our money to work, then the money we work for doesn't matter as much. So saying, I want to reach financial independence so I can retire early without a plan for what happens after you retire isn't very motivating. And I've heard some people say, well, I want to retire early so I can spend more time with my family. And sure, if your job takes you away 3-4 weeks at a time, or you travel like Michael Zuber does, where was going on several continents in a couple of weeks, yes, more time with family becomes important. But if you retired and you didn't have to work at all, and you had nothing on your schedule, your kids go to school. Your kids want to spend time with their friends. You can be friends with your kids, but they're not going to want to spend 100% of their time with you. You need things to do on top of spending time with your family. And for me, it's still work. But it's a really not relaxing. It takes a massive weight off your shoulders when you know that your work is optional. So while we're formulating the questions, and I'll go through each one of them, and like I said, this live stream goes until the questions stop coming in. In the comments, can you put in, what do you think you're going to do with your time once you are financially free? Once we get you to the point where you don't have to work, what is going to be your focus? And if it's traveling, eventually that gets boring. If it's spend time with family, what are you going to be doing when your family's not available? Even if it's spend time with your friends, most of our friends, when we reach financial freedom, they're still working. I have friends that I work with, and I kind of feel like when I'm not working anymore, I'm not sure I'm going to interact with them because I interact with them because I work. So that's kind of tied together. My brother retired 7 years ago now with 10 paid off rentals. And his biggest struggle, not his biggest, I don't know his biggest, but one of the big struggles I see that he has is his friends all still work. And I still work. I take a month off a year and I travel with him. And we've done things like go to Colombia or Thailand, or in 2021, we traveled across the United States in a truck, basically spent a whole month traveling. Starting this year, I'm going to turn that into 3 months. So that'll help a little bit more with his travel. But since he literally travels all the time, he's had to go through a merry-go-round of, these people can be off this time of the year, these people can be off this time of the year, this is his alone months. And so figuring out how to schedule that is a little more motivating than thinking, I just want to have all of the time to do all of the nothing that I want to do. Because that sounds great. And it is great for a couple of weeks. But take a long vacation sometime and start to realize how, if you're not active, if you're not using your mind, what we think is important is not. Time off is important when we're working, but when we're not working, time off is no different. Like Michael Zuber says, every day is Saturday. That's kind of funny. In his videos on One Rental at a Time, he has to actually check his calendar or his phone or figure out which expert he's talking to know which day of the week it is, which is a good state to be in. But look at what he's done as a financially free person who does not have to work. He takes his time and he makes at least 5 videos a day. He is still mentally being productive. I know the FIRE community, that acronym is catchy and people like it. And like I said, I have a little bit of a trouble with the retire early, because retirement, by definition, over the last several decades, meant you stopped working. So retire early, I wish there was a catchy way to say, don't need to work, but can still work. It's an option. But I don't know what that acronym is. So when we come up with that, that's going to be the one we go with. I also have some other problems with the FIRE community where I watched Mr. Money Mustache, and it's great content, great concept of avoiding life creep, but the idea of living close to work so that you can ride a bicycle because it saves money not having a car. And maybe there is some concept of environmental preservation where you don't have as big a carbon footprint. There's something there. But I live in Washington State. There would be about 3 months out of the year where the weather was good enough to ride a bicycle anywhere. The last 2 weeks were all under 20 degrees and there was ice and snow on everything. So even when it's not raining, it might not be bicycle friendly. And I do agree in being frugal for a few years, but what kind of life is being frugal forever? Permanently living frugally? No, 2 to 4 years to get the income coming in from some assets where you don't have to work to actually have that income. Sure, be a little frugal. I chose house hacking because it was a way to take your largest expense. And for most of us, housing or taxes is our largest expense. And so I took house hacking because it reduced or eliminated my housing costs. And I'm transparent on my channel. I share numbers and I just say the numbers for what they are. That way I never have to remember what I said if I made it up, because these numbers kind of matter to me. I know what my cash flow is. I know what my mortgage obligations are on my rentals. I know what my net worth is. And I didn't know what my net worth was for about 10 years until I made a video to try to figure out if $1 million in net worth or $1 million in debt happened first, which happened in the same transaction. But I still house hack, even though, and like I said, I know these numbers because I make videos on them sometimes. My net worth is a little over 2 million. 10 years ago, my net worth was negative $89,000. I had $89,000 in bad debt that I didn't know about until the divorce. And it took, it's 2022 now, 11 years. So it's taken 11 years to get to a net worth of over 2 million. And basically net worth is a made up number that means nothing. But since I've done the research for videos, I know that with the gross value of all of my assets, if I sold everything and walked away and paid agent fees and paid capital gains tax, I would have about 2.1, a little over $2.1 million. So technically multimillionaire. Weird things to say when, like I said, 11 years ago, I was making $17 an hour, had a bunch of bad debt, and was a single parent with 3 kids. It's possible for the average person to reach financial freedom in less than 10 years, even if you're not starting from a good position. It's the main reason I'm trying to share this. So when we talk about making work optional, some people make the mistake of thinking, I need income that is at least as much as what my W-2 income is. And that's like thinking that you've been living literally paycheck to paycheck for the last year. You've never had a penny that you could set aside. And not only have you not been able to save, but when we're working, when we have that W-2 job, we're also paying taxes. Employees are taxed in a higher bracket than somebody who has investments. As an investor, I still have paid $0 in rental income tax on rental profit. So the taxes on my W-2 job are a lot higher than my taxes on my, zero, carry the zero, carry this, it's Jane math. You're also saving for retirement when you're working a job. Once you are financially free, I'm still kind of saving. In financial independence, retire early, there are different stages. There's lean fi, where you have just enough money coming in to cover the basic living expenses to where if you lost your job, you wouldn't have to, you would still have a house and still be able to eat. Then there's barista fire, where you're making enough money to where if you worked a part-time job, you would then hit coast fire, where if you just kept working when you're 65, you'd have enough money in investments to have a comfortable retirement. And then there's financial independence. And then fat fire is the top one, where your profit from assets is multiples of what it costs you to live. And I don't know that I'm there yet. My rental profit is about 4 times now what it costs me to live. So I think I'm on coast fat fire. If I never made another investment and I never reinvested any of the capital that's coming in from the rentals, eventually the mortgages would be paid off and the cash flow would even grow more. So and that was a very poor breakdown of the possibly 10 different stages of financial independence, which I should make a video on and break down each one with actual detail and some research and make it sound clearer. So when we're making work optional, we don't have to replace our whole W-2 income. We take out the taxes, we take out the saving for retirement, we take out the cost of working, that money that it costs us to live. And the easiest way to find this, instead of projecting forward and thinking, I wonder how much housing is going to be, and I wonder how much my food is going to be, and I wonder how much my entertainment is going to be. Look at the history. You already have the data. Look at your last year. Pull up your bank statements, credit card statements, and think, how much have I been spending to live my current lifestyle? And then if you take work out of that, it might cost you more because now you have time to fill. And while traveling sounds great, there are some countries that I like to go to, Colombia, Thailand, where I came back with more money than I went with. But there are other countries where I think my next trip is going to be to the Mediterranean. And from what I've seen, the islands in the Greece area, I'm going to spend more money there than I do living here. So I'm going to come back with less money than I had that month. And if anybody's been to Greece, I would appreciate reaching out and giving me some advice on where to go. It'd be my first time in that area. So we figure out how much money we need to make work optional. And again, making work optional doesn't mean you don't work. It means you don't have to work. And I said earlier, people say they love their job so much they would do it for free. My thing is I love my job so much, it's the only one I would do for money. If they took away the money, I'd probably not be going in anymore. I love my job. I get to play in trucks like they're go-karts. I get to play in simulators. I get to help people find local driving jobs. I get to help people find non-driving jobs. Not sure I'm going to retire late. That's why the retire early part of FIRE confuses me. So the purpose of this video, though, is to make work optional. And I talked about in my last live stream, what is financial independence? Financial independence is when you have more money coming in than it costs you to live and you don't have to sell your life to get there. But to make work optional, I want to focus on it's still optional. Meaning once you reach financial freedom, now you can look for that job that you want. So I talked about, and so this is where audience participation comes in. I'm going to look at the chats and go through it here in a second and look at any questions. And I asked if people would put what they're going to fill their time with once they reach financial freedom. Here's a second question. If you'll do me a favor and leave another comment. Once work is optional, what job do you think you're going to go for? Is there a job? Scuba instructor, parachute diving, skydiving instructor, music teacher. I call him a friend. I know him a little bit. He was a music teacher and he's just now getting into real estate and he does couch flipping and he's reaching financial freedom. And I'm curious if once he does that, he's actually going to be able to pick a music teaching job to do where he doesn't have to worry about how much a teacher makes. So let me know. Once you're financially free and you don't have to do the job you're doing now, which you're probably doing for money, which a lot of us do. And financial independence doesn't mean we never worked. Most of us had to work 5 to 10 years to put the money to work to find the assets that make work optional. What's that job going to be when you don't have to have one? So let me go up here. I just said some hellos to people. Jones and Rob and Larry, Andrew, Dawn, howdy. Good, loud and clear, good. Josh, howdy. Philip, howdy. Tiffany, howdy from Nashville, howdy. Seems a little more fitting. I always want to have one of my cowboy hats here when I talk to somebody from Nashville or Texas. But I don't. I have a bull hat here today. I'm not sure why that's in here. Linda, howdy to everybody. Dela Navarro, hello, howdy. 23, the Sanchez, howdy. Jones, meet Kevin has a discount link under his latest video, StreamYard. My memory serves me right. It'll allow you to show the comments questions. To StreamYard? I should look into that. I should definitely look into that. I like what Matt does. He does Matt, the Lumberjack Landlord, has a Zoom account. I have a Zoom account for my company. So I probably have access to that. Like I said, I'm not a tech guy, though. I should probably do a StreamYard, though. Andrew, you're 32. I don't want to retire to stop working. I want to retire so I don't have to work for someone else. Perfect. So you can start something on your own and be your own boss. Good. Rob, you're a gamer. Nothing to do after retirement doesn't apply. That is very accurate. Have you tried New World? I like New World. It's Amazon's attempt at a World of Warcraft. It would definitely be a time sink. But even then, even if you're in a raiding guild where it takes up a lot of your time, 6 months later, you'd be looking for something. Larry, what if one can fire and wants to quit their W-2 job? What is recommended for healthcare if retired early, long-term and insurance? Part-time job with benefits. Have you thought what you would do for benefits? Absolutely. Join the Marine Corps, go to Desert Storm, get blown up a couple times, get free healthcare for the rest of your life. That's one option. But it's a line item on the expense column. A lot of people in the BiggerPockets forums and the real estate rookie groups will talk about, I don't know how I'm going to retire because I need healthcare. So I run a business. I have 60 staff working in our truck driving school. We have a 401k, a simple plan, and health insurance. So the person pays somewhere between $50 and $110 a month based on their age and whatever criteria the insurance company uses. The company pays $700 to $900 per person, depending on the age and whatever criteria that insurance company has, right? So older person with some health concerns. Our expense on the high end is $900 and their expense on the high end is $110. So that is, let's say, $1,200. Add it together, put in a buffer. Each of my duplexes is cash flowing at least $1,200 now after having them for a couple of years. First year, most cash flowed $800 to $1,000, but after 2 or 3 years, they're all cash flowing $1,200 or more. Average right now across the board is $630, $630 something. So I have one duplex I call Corvette because it was the one I had when I got the Corvette. If I wasn't working, I would have a duplex called healthcare. It is a line item on the expense column. And I have a video on my channel called an asset for every expense. So if you don't want a house hack, you need a rental income or your stocks or your business to produce enough money for your housing. I house hack. I have food, I have transportation, I have entertainment, and I have healthcare. Reserves, right now while I'm working, I keep $30,000 in an account because when I had 7 or less units, I kept 10,000. Once that got bigger and I thought a chain of events can go wrong, I raised it to 30 while I'm working. If I stopped working, reserves would go up to at least 50,000. And part of that is to say, I can have a health expense that pops up. The assets are going to pay for the premiums for insurance, but I need that reserve to take care of any other expenses that might not be covered because I'm not working for a company anymore. And there are some insurance plans that you can get into. The really good thing is in the United States, insurance is going to be $600 to $1,200 per person. So if you're a married couple, insurance is going to double, so 2 duplexes. If you travel outside the United States, pretty much the exact same coverage with the same doctors, because most of the doctors I've worked with here in the United States were from the countries I'm traveling to anyways. It's $60 a month for 2 people for the same coverage. So that's why there's so many countries that have expat towns. In Colombia, it's Medellin, which I didn't get a chance to go to, but everyone said that's an expat town. In Thailand, there's some where it's just a majority of people that move there from the United States. So healthcare is a little bit easier if you're not in the United States. That's one concern. The other is have an asset to cover that expense, same as anything else. So if you have more health concerns, if you have more issues in your family with health concerns, more assets. Kind of like I have a friend who makes a really good amount of money, like literally 10 times what I make. His cost of living, their cost of living as a married couple is multiples of mine. I can easily live on $2,500 a month while I'm house hacking. They need 20. And even if they were house hacking, they would need $20,000 a month coming in. They just need more assets to be financially free. It doesn't mean they have to reduce their standard of living. They just need to produce more income from assets to maintain their current lifestyle. So again, financial independence for me is not about being frugal. It's about maintaining that lifestyle that you're comfortable with. And while I could live on $2,500 a month, I do probably 3 times that just because I like to do stuff, but don't have to. Cody, howdy. Andrew, your dream job is to work in a game store you own, not as the manager, just work in a store and talk to people about games all day and upsell Warhammer and D&D stuff. That is it. I've had that same, maybe not goal, but idea of, in most towns, there is a small gaming store where there's some guy that apparently doesn't need money, so he's probably financially free before I knew what the term was. And that's what he does, or they do. They have their miniature table set up, they have their gaming nights. That's a cool plan. Linda, howdy. Analyze deals, buy them, rehab them, manage the property managers on your long-term, short-term, and then hang out with family the rest of the time. Perfect. So managing your property managers, yeah. So building a rental business because it can be as passive or as involved as you like. So the months that you're feeling like I want to be involved in this, you take more things on, and the months where you want to travel, you tell your PMs or your handyman that hey, the tenants are calling you for the next month. Um, Kind of very similar to what I'm doing. Josh, howdy again. You would teach people like I do. Cool. So I suggest making some YouTube videos or TikTok or whatever as you're learning to teach, whatever the current platform is that you're the most comfortable with. I listen to YouTube the most out of all of the different platforms. So that's why I chose YouTube to come on here and share this. And my original plan today is the 4th. So 2 days from now, I should make a video. 2 days from now is the 1 year anniversary of starting on YouTube. January 6th, 2021, posted my first video. Your first ones are going to be pretty rough. But the sooner you get to making them, the better they'll get. Hopefully. Hopefully someone might have been okay. Chester, I'm going to finish Michael Zuber's One Rental at a Time course. Work on getting your first deal done this year by the end of January. Set my goal with a deadline. Awesome. Cool. I think we talked a little bit in the Facebook group about how much time you study your market. I think 60 to 90 days to get a good feel of what is average so that you know which one stands out, which is right out of the One Rental at a Time course. He just added a new portion from my content in there on how to run this like a business. Cool. John Williams, howdy. Besides the Amigos, what creators do I watch? Well, I like Paula Pant, Afford Anything, and I have listened to Mr. Money Mustache, but here's a moment of transparency. There is a group on Facebook called Choose FI that seems somehow associated with that, and that is a rough group. Moderators just don't like anybody who doesn't, get in line with. You have to be super frugal, and you have to it's just hard. It's a hard group to interact with. Chandler David Smith, he runs a company. He does pest control, and he's got a huge YouTube channel. Of course, Graham Stephan, but I like stuff from 2 or 3 years ago. So he has what I consider evergreen content, ideas from 2 or 3 years ago. Meet Kevin from 2 years ago. With Graham, I avoid anything that says reacting to or millennial money. And with Meet Kevin, I avoid anything that says stimulus or his run for governor. Kris Krohn, I listen to Kris Krohn, and not so much because I want to invest the way he does. He's larger, more syndication stuff now, kind of like Grant Cardone. Not as big, but he's pretty big. But his energy in his videos, it's just like that's a guy I want to hang out with. So if I want to get motivated, I'll watch that. Millennial Mike, check out his content. He's got some good stuff. He has good guests that come on with different like tax strategies and stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much the content. I'm sure I've got more. I could literally pull up my subscription of who I watch the most. Which I thought would have been easier. Minority Mindset. How did I forget that one? Jaspreet Singh. His stuff's great. I like his 10-minute, 15-minute videos. Every now and then he does a long one where it just seems like a bunch of them strung together. One run all the time. BiggerPockets, of course. Hopefully you're familiar with BiggerPockets. BiggerPockets, they have a real estate podcast, then they have a real estate rookie podcast, then they have the BiggerPockets Money podcast. That's pretty much it. I will watch Alux too. Alux great grammar. Alux has some good videos too. I like when Alux comes out with a video on 15 things rich people do that poor people don't. They get just hammered on in the comments, like hundreds of thousands of downvotes when we had the downvote button. And all of these, anybody wants to just attack them because some people seem offended by the idea that being poor is sometimes a choice. And if you get an inheritance and you choose to buy a truck, and spend your money, and then someone else gets an inheritance and they buy a duplex. A year later, their lives are going to be very different. And those were choices. But when Alex puts out their videos like that, I've watched them a few times. They've got several on things rich and poor people do differently. One of the videos I liked that I made not a couple weeks ago was things that poor people and rich people do that are almost the same. And when I was making that list, I was kind of shocked at how many things came up so close to the same. Rob, in retirement, I plan to spend all of my time trolling Meet Kevin. So that'd be beautiful. I do like his real estate stuff though. His idea is you put money to work in real estate and you understand the taxes, and that's beneficial. Um, Jonathan, howdy. Financial independence, recreational employment. Actually like that. There's a YouTube channel. I can't remember their name. It's not Our Rich Journey. Those are people who retired to Portugal. It was someone else. It was a couple, and they had a great video on. They're completely financially free, financially independent, but they were bored, so they wanted to get part-time jobs. So they got jobs as minimum wage job as a security person at a stadium or something else, and they said they were treated like dirt. If you have a job that some people have because they haven't developed the skills to get a better job, or they're in a situation in life where that's the only job they can get, you don't get treated really well. But they changed it and they started doing volunteer work. They found food banks. They found different ways to volunteer for work. And when you are a volunteer and people know you're not there for remuneration and you could walk at any time, they were treated really well. So recreational employment is I like it. Chester, I think the thing that keeps us alive after retirement is finding a new purpose, either intentionally or your favorite by accident. I agree. Having that purpose. People don't realize I could read books, and I think I could read books forever, right? But how long would your body last if all you were doing was reading books? Heinemann family, howdy. If I didn't have to work anymore, I'd spend more time building furniture with traditional techniques and hand tools. Beautiful. Don't want to ruin a good hobby now by turning it into a business. Cool. Yeah, I like to create things with my hands. I suck at furniture making though. So I turned to making chainmail. I should show a shirt someday. Full 27-pound chainmail shirt made with 14 gauge wire, tin snips, and a Bic pen. Took a year and a half. Making things with your hands is cool. Invest to wealth. Howdy. Tiger23336. Howdy. Going to Greece in October, doing a cruise around the islands, ending in Istanbul. Nice. I think we're going to go February or March. My friend did some research. Apparently it's a good weather time there. And I don't know if they like cold or hot, so I guess I'll find out. Chester, always have a focus as paramount before or after retirement. I agree. Tigger, no job. Focus on Christmas lights. I like it. You can have a business going around putting up Christmas lights or putting up decorations. Dawn, howdy. Matt, the lumberjack landlord, has a superpower. He can look at someone's name and generally know if they're new to the channel or not. I have memory issues. I'm lucky to remember my name. That's why it's on a post-it over here. So if anybody's new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for checking it out. As I go down these really quick, I just want to say one more time, the purpose of my content is to help the average individual reach financial freedom and make work optional in less than 10 years, even if you're not starting from the best position. So if that's something that you like, hit subscribe. Live streams of this every Tuesday, and I stay here until the questions are done coming in. And one day, Matt, the lumberjack landlord, and me are going to have a competition at the end of the night to see who can stay up the latest, probably. Coach high school softball, Don. Nice. I like it. Rob, jobs. We don't need no stinking jobs. I like the meme that goes around that Blazing Saddles was edited for today's current, climate. It's 7 minutes long now. And I lost my spot. Here we go. Emerson Ridley. Howdy. Chubby Fire is where you are. Yeah, nice. I got the chubby covered. Nice. Brett. Howdy. How's Idaho? Job after financial freedom. Work for a friend of mine that owns a coin shop. Nice. If you're into coin collecting, I have a few we talk about. They're pretty cool. I've got some, what are they, 18th century silver eagle, something with Indian stuff. Could have collected them for a while when I was a long time ago. Charles O'Leary. Howdy. Solar energy vacation resort owner. Solar energy vacation resort owner. Interesting. So basically, it could be completely off the grid if you're solar energy kind of out anywhere. Nice. Julie. Howdy. Chester. Not too sure yet on what job I want to work. Something to figure out later. And the cool thing is, if you're working on your first deal, you have some time to worry about that. Jay. Howdy. I also teach music online. Would love to limit myself to 10 students and travel. Nice. Cool. I've always been fascinated by music, but I'm tone deaf. Too much loud noises. And so I suck at music. Tried everything. Tried guitar. Tried piano. Never figured it out. So I shifted to languages. I have an ear for languages. Emerson. I know short-term rentals are all the rage right now, but they are actually a job to keep up. I think it is a great way to start, but I'd like to pivot to long-term or short single-family house or multifamily down the road. Nice. Short-term rentals are more cash flow, but they take more work. There's a thing I talk about sometimes called the real estate axis, where the more work you're willing to do, the more money you're going to make, and the more risk you're willing to take, the more money you're going to make. So at the top up here is self-managing short-term rentals. Property manager for short-term rentals, self-managing long-term rentals, property manager for long-term rentals, real estate investment trust, syndication. Like the less work you're going to do, the less the return is going to be. The risky thing with short-term rentals is right now I see a lot of people who are buying short-term rentals because that's the only way they can find a deal that cash flows in that market. And then what happens if the HOA, municipality, county, or some rule or regulation changes in that area and they can no longer do short-term rentals? Now they have to go to long-term rental or owner occupy, and that place is going to cost them money every month. So the goal for me, if I was doing short-term rentals, would be to buy a place that would make sense as a long-term rental. It might not have to get my 10% return, but it would have to cash flow something so that I wasn't losing money every month if I lost the ability to do short-term rentals. But moment of transparency, I'm super lazy and I'm working full-time and I run a nonprofit and I'm trying to make enough YouTube content to make sure that I can help people. So I self-manage long-term rentals. And it takes me about 2 hours a month to manage 16 units. I think it would take me about 2 hours a month to self-manage a property manager who managed my 16 units. So as my portfolio scales, or if I ever wanted to travel a lot more than 3 months a year, I might have a property manager, which would move me a little bit further down the amount of work you do, so the amount of money you make. Angel, howdy, you're the goat too. Sue B, howdy. Focus on your part-time dessert company. Nice. I definitely have a sweet tooth. Sometimes, so I usually eat one meal a day, and then I eat small things throughout the day, but never really more than one full meal in a day. So when I go to lunch with people at work, it's confusing. So I'm president of a truck driving school, and I go to lunch with agencies and employers and managers from companies that we work with. And we'll go to like a Mexican restaurant and they'll get, enchiladas or burritos or whatever. And I get the deep fried ice cream because that's lunch if you've already eaten. Cool. Karen, howdy. Work part-time at a nonprofit with flexible schedule, volunteer at your church, spend more time with family and friends, no alarm clock. I like that, the no alarm clock. That is something in the beginning I thought I was going to try to work into a bunch of videos is trying to live a life without an alarm clock. It's the one thing that I've always not liked because for 17 years I was a truck driver. And the truck driver's schedule is based on the needs of the company, right? You don't have, it's not banker's hours. Our graduates do go to work for local companies where they're home every night. So our actual company tagline is be home every night. But I warn all of them, you are not going to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. You're either going to work 3 in the morning, or you're going to go to work at Tenant night and, work that night and come home the next day. You work a random schedule. So for me, it's always taken an alarm clock. If you work a job where every single day you go to work at 7 in the morning, so you wake up at 5:30 or 6 or whatever it takes, after so many years, you just wake up and then your alarm clock goes off because you're on this set schedule. But I've had such a weird random schedule that pretty much no matter what my schedule is, I have to have an alarm clock. Looking forward to not having that. US, I know I'm going to butcher the name. I've seen it many times. So thanks for coming. US Screen, you screen, us screen. Need a phonetic on that. Howdy. What is your expense ratio on your rentals? I'm concerned I should be saving more for CapEx items like roofs and HVAC. I'm currently at 35% expense ratio. That's a lot more than me. Part of that could depend on the age of your buildings. I have a building that was built in 1929. The rest were all built in 1980 or newer. The one in 1929 has been updated. It had new roofs. It had new plumbing. It had its whole PEX. It had all new electric. So there was nothing old. So that doesn't need a lot of work. And if I had one rental or two rentals, I would probably be more conservative. I think in the beginning, I was saving every penny. So 20, 35% sounds great. With 16 units, I set aside 10%. I have a video on my channel called How Much in Reserves. 10% of gross rents goes for maintenance and CapEx. And even in years where I replaced a roof, that's been plenty. And then 5% for vacancy, even though I've never had one. I've had 2 tenant turnovers. One, I had 4 days to do the tenant turnovers from December 26th till January 1st to get that person in there, basically. And the other was they were gone for a month. That was covered. So I had that whole month to get ready for the next person. So I have never had to carry costs of a property, but the tenant turnover costs money. When I'm buying a property, that's my goal. I want to make sure I hit my 10% cash on cash return. If I set aside 10% for repairs and CapEx and 5% for vacancy. So 15% is what I'm setting aside, right? Until my reserve account is full. When I had 7 units or less, I kept $10,000. Now at 16 units, I have that account at $30,000. So $30,000 in my savings account is mentally marked as that's my reserve just for reserves. When it's full, that 15% from gross rents, and I'm not going to be this quick at math, but $23,000 a month coming in gross rents, 15% of that, which would be used to fill that account if it was low, is added to the investing column. So when my reserves are full, my investing money builds faster. That way, I'm never using the 15% from gross rents in my lifestyle. So that when money is used out of that 30,000 and I use 8,000 to replace a roof on a single family, or 11 on the duplex, or 15 on a fourplex, it comes out of that 30. Then 15% of gross rents goes to fill that account back up. So the investing builds a little slower if that reserve account is down. So based on the size of your reserves, the size of your portfolio, the age of your buildings, and when they've been updated, then it never hurts to be more conservative. The more money that you're setting aside, the safer you are. The safer you are, remember the XY. The more work you're willing to do, the more money you're going to make. The more risk you're willing to take, the more money you're going to make. The more you set aside is less money you have to invest to build for the next asset. So what you're comfortable with to let you sleep at night, your SWAN account, sleep well at night account, and what lets you feel that you're saving enough for the next investment. That was a good question. Thank you. Jones, off topic. The finance guys help us invest, but no one talks about healthcare outside of with your job. Any advice on getting health, dental, life outside of employer? School didn't teach me. So that was talked about a little bit earlier. And I remember the name of who, you've been here many times, you asked the question, sorry. It's an expense item. So have an asset that produces enough money to cover healthcare. So running a company, I don't pay for it. The company pays the employer's portion of healthcare, which for most people is $600 to $900. The employee pays their portion, which can be $100. It could be 50, it could be 150, depending on their age and some other things, right? So we can pay an amount, as the employer can pay an amount, the employee pays an amount. You combine those two together, that's going to be your expense. Pad it a little because you're not a part of a big group. There are some insurance groups that you can join as a solo person. But if you just padded it up to 1,200 or so a month while you're living in the United States, if you moved out of the United States, it's like $660 a month per couple. But in the United States, it's $1,200 per person. So for me, my duplexes are cash flowing about $1,200. So there is a duplex. If I stopped working my job, that duplex would then be called home or insurance duplex. Also, since healthcare costs might be a little more if you don't have an employer's portion covering the insurance, I would raise the reserves when I'm not working. So my plan while I'm working is to keep it at 30,000. If my portfolio grows, I might raise that number. But if I stopped working, I would raise that number in reserves as well, because things like healthcare, transportation is covered. But I set aside $700 a month for the next vehicle purchase. But if I wasn't working, I might increase that. So it's just that thing, like with the how much do you set aside for CapEx and vacancy? You're setting aside more for healthcare, but that money still comes from your assets. It's coming from your work right now. Your employer, if you have healthcare from your employer, you're paying a portion, or maybe you have one of those deals where you pay zero, but your employer is paying your insurance. That's all you have to do, is you're going to cover that premium when you don't work there anymore. Adam. Howdy. I currently have a primary home and thinking of buying a rental property, 2 buildings, 5 units, with a partner. The mortgage would be in your name. How long would it take you to get another mortgage? So it depends on your debt to income ratio and your ability to save, because a lot of people remember, I have to save a down payment, but you also need closing costs, money for immediate repairs if you buy a place and it needs any work, and then the lender is going to want you to have reserves. So as your portfolio grows, I've had one lender say they want 4% of the gross value set aside for reserves. I've had other ones say we want 3 months of all of your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payments, your mortgages, how much you would need to pay 3 months worth of them. So the bigger your portfolio is, the bigger your reserves need to be. And one workaround to that is lenders will accept 50% of a retirement account as a reserve. You don't have to tap it or take the money out. You just have to prove that it's in there, it's seasoned, which it's been in there more than 3 months, and it's your money. So it depends on a lot of different factors on when you can get your next one. I've worked with people who got 3 in 1 year, right when they were starting out, but their debt to income ratio was really good. If your debt to income ratio starts to be an issue, that's where this time delay kicks in, where they're going to want to see rental income on your tax returns. When you have rental income on 2 years worth of tax returns, then lenders will start looking at the rental income of your properties in your debt to income ratio. And they'll look at the rental income of the property you are purchasing and that deal that you're making an offer on. When they do that, though, some lenders have required that you have at least 3 months remaining on leases. And for me, it was confusing the first time the lender told me this, because they're letting me make a 30-year commitment for hundreds of thousands of dollars because my tenants made at least a 3-month commitment to live in one of my rentals. And the lender explained to me, the lender is making money getting you the loan, and then they're going to sell the loan. They want at least 3 months to do that, so that by the time your leases are up, it's no longer their problem. Made sense. Jeremy, howdy. Dion, and all putting together your Amazon carts for Airbnb rentals tonight. Had a strange dishwasher issue tonight in a unit. Starting to feel like Michael Zuber was right about no dishwasher rule. I have dishwashers in all of mine. I would rather have a dishwasher issue once a year than a tenant turnover. You're getting to the point now, Jeremy, where you're going to have more units than I do. 16 units, 10 years. And yeah, I did just add a duplex in 2021. So 14 before that, 2 tenant turnovers. Some of the reasons is the criteria. I like side-by-side small multifamily, so tenants aren't above or below another, so that they don't have noise complaints, or a plumbing issue only affects one of them. I like to have garages and at least 2 bedrooms, because more space equals more stuff, which means less likely to move. I allow pets because people don't like to relocate an animal. I like washer dryer hookups in the units, because people that are using laundromats or shared laundry are just waiting for the next place to open. And one of the things that I like to also have, which I don't think I've ever mentioned before, is I like to have a dishwasher. Same thing with the washer dryer. It's not a luxury like it might have been 20, 30 years ago. It's kind of standard. They're $300 or $400. I do have one place that the property backs up to a field, and rodents are a problem. They came in several times and they would eat the drain hose on the dishwasher to get to um, the water. And rat poison works great if it's rats in your house. But if you live next to a field, that is a revolving rodent, whatever, can get in and out of your house. So I actually went to, out here, they're called a McClendon's. It's a hardware store. And I got electrical, there's a name for the metal tubing, whatever it is, but it's like flex hose for electricity. And I snaked the dishwasher drain through that. And so that back of that now has literally a metal tube where that is. Haven't had an issue since. Um, so yes, and when issues like that happen, it usually happens to a couple of them, and so it's going to feel like you don't want to have a dishwasher, but and it could be where you're located too. But where I'm at, pretty much everybody has a dishwasher. Julie, I believe magic cards are on the upcoming currency. Your son has quite a bit of success from it. Yeah, there's a lot of people that make money off of magic cards. It is a interesting way to do it too. Evolve Properties. Howdy. So excellent question. We're financially independent, but I'm working for 6 more years of my W-2 just to cover healthcare. I would suggest getting an asset to cover the healthcare and earning those, just buying those 6 years of your life back, unless you like your job. I love my job, so I don't see me quitting. And actually, I have our lowest tier of healthcare through the company. So, Jones, I'm 25, so my investments allowed me to be job free. If my investments allow me to job free, I'd see the world, keep growing and acquiring assets when traveling gets boring. YouTube videos, cooking, and baking. Nice. Some people will say, when I quit my job, I want to grow my assets. Make sure that your assets have reached the tipping point where they can continue to acquire assets. People will say, well, I'm going to quit my job and go become a real estate agent, or quit my job and then buy some rentals. Well, you might have a bunch of money saved up when you had your job, but as soon as you go to buy those rentals, unless you're going to do it in all cash, getting a loan gets harder. You have to go to asset-based lending, non-QM loans, or go commercial. And while you have your W-2 is the time to get those assets. If you can get the assets and you can get that income on your W-2 and show a profit so that you're bankable, then making work optional so that you don't have to work, so you can travel but continue to add the assets. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Kind of spun in a circle. Jonathan, howdy. Andrew, it is a $2.5 billion industry. Yeah. Scooby-Two, howdy. Nice name. Hey, Dion, aside from eating out more and spending 1 month abroad, what are some other things you do now that you're financially independent or want to do as you grow towards financial? I'm sure it was freedom, but my chat moved. I need to find a way to not have it do that. What are some things you do aside from that? What do you do as you grow towards financial freedom? If you know me in personal life, this is something I love to do. It's really cool. When you don't have enough money, it's the only thing. And I remember going to restaurants and never getting a soda. Like when I felt super rich was the first time I took my kids to a restaurant. I thought, I'm going to get a Coke because I could afford to actually have a Coke with my meal. For years, I would go and I would get an appetizer. Kids would eat whatever they want. So we had enough money to go out, not enough for me to eat and have a drink, right? So I was stuck in that frugal mode for years until I realized if I put my money to work in real estate, in about 4 to 6 years, I won't have to live this way. So I started working towards financial freedom. So I go out to eat all the time. Now my kids are older and moved out. It's a lot easier. I always had 2 or 3 cars, and it wasn't because I liked cars. It was because I paid $2,000 for a car, and I had to have 3 of them to hope that one of them would run well enough to get me to work. So since 2018, it's been brand new Corvette. Now it's brand new F-250. So I'm always going to have a really nice car, and I save $700 a month for the next car purchase. So whatever. I thought I was going to get a Tesla truck. I liked the model that they came out with, and now they have a new version of it coming out with, which I think looks like a stupid Subaru on big tires. And not that Subarus aren't good, but a Tesla that looks like a Subaru, no thanks. So I'm getting my $100 back from the deposit I made. But I keep cash in my pocket, hundreds, not a lot, just a few, because I like to walk up to people and just go, do you like money? And I've had some people say no, and I go, oh, that's cool, and I walk away. But if they say they like money, I give them a $100 bill. I was never able to do that before. I was never able to give $10 to somebody that needed money, but to just randomly know that this person could be somebody who works at the company, or somebody, one of our students, or it could be just somebody that I'm running into and I talk to them. I could tell from their position that they're like I was for over 40 years of my life, where $100 that month made a huge impact to, I think there were times in my life where if I had somehow acquired $1,000, my life could have taken a completely different path. It was $1,000 between me and financial stability, let alone financial independence. So that's probably the least frugal thing I do. So if you ever meet me in real life and I ask you the question, do you like money? Don't be sarcastic. Actually, like most of us, say you do like money. That's probably way too much of an overshare. And I don't do it. I don't know. I do it for selfish reasons. I do it because I feel good afterwards. So it's kind of like the Friends episode. No act is selfless. Scooby-Doo. Love listening to what might be possible down the line as I save for your next down payment. Because the reason I'm doing this is trying to show people that an average person, not super smart, didn't start super rich, didn't have anybody to help, took 10 years to get to a point where it's mind-blowing the amount of peace that comes from knowing that you never have to work again, ever. Trying to get as many other people into that point as possible. Chester, Jaspreet is awesome too, but long form vids are too long. And if you've noticed, most of them are coupled together shorter vids. I'll do his ones where he's got Jaspreet Singh from Minority Mindset has a channel called Minority Mindset, and he'll do an interview where he has, I think it's his producer, interview him on some topics, and that is an hour long. I'll listen to it. Right. But I like the 10-minute ones. But when they come 5, 10-minute ones together, to me, that harder to keep my attention. Julie. Valuetainment. Nice. Chester. Poverty is a mindset. I think the way I liked hearing it was there's a huge difference between poor and broke. Okay. I overshare too much. And I wish there was a way to edit in lives, because as a kid, we were poor, and then broke is a temporary state. So at 8, my dad left, and he took my 17-year-old older brother and left. And so it was me and my mom and my little bit older brother. Was he 5 years older than me? So he was 13, 14. My mom was 45. She'd never worked a job. She'd been a stay-at-home mom. Now, this was 1978, so this was a time when that was still a thing. When we had nothing. And before that, this is how I never saw us as poor before that, because we never owned a house. We never rented a house. We used to move into houses, fix the doors and windows, and wait for the owner to show up and say, who the heck are you guys? And then we would just move to the next one. There was one that was really nice. And the owners told my dad, if you pay us $50 a month, you can rent it. We like the idea of somebody living here because you're taking care of the place. Like, we would fix it up, right? And my dad said, no, we don't pay rent. And we'd move. And then he left when I was 8. So then I had my mom, and we were in a house that we weren't renting and we didn't own. So we moved into a mobile home behind some friends' houses with an extension cord going through the windows. We were poor. That is not a choice. That is not, we didn't make decisions, me and my mom and my brother, to just not have money. And so that I don't depress people, this story has an awesome ending. My mom would work in the onion fields. And so I worked, my first job with her was 8, 9, and 10. I worked next to the onion fields. Little kid filling bags of onions. And if I filled a bag, I'd make 50 cents. My best day was like $16. But all the money went to my mom. And at the end of the day, we would go to this thing called a roach coach. It's like a truck with food that, there's a better term for it. My brain shut off. And I would get to buy a candy bar with my money that I didn't have to share with my brother. It was the only time I got something that was just mine, right? So it was huge for me. But we were working the onion fields, and across the valley, we lived in this place called Antelope Valley, California. So Palmdale, Lancaster, Rosemont, middle of the desert. We could see this big, huge building being built, this massive building, 2 stories, just the biggest. You could see it 30 miles away, this building being built. I don't know how far, it felt like it was that far. And my mom thought, I could probably go there and get a job emptying their trash. That's a new building, and so they're probably going to be hiring. So she went over there and applied. Now, while my mom had never had a job, she was very smart. Very, she had graduated high school back in the day. She applied for this position, and she was very petite. She was, what her biggest was probably like 97 pounds, and she was short. They asked her how she felt about confined spaces. My mom became a tile bonder on the space shuttle. So Rockwell was building their building there. She went from working in an onion field where she probably made $30 or $40 a day at 50 cents a bag to $32 an hour. We moved our trailer from behind our friend's house into a trailer park. She was making $32 an hour in the 70s, and we moved into a trailer park. That was her version of being rich. So yeah, for a while we were poor, but her life changed. It wasn't that way always. But the difference between poor and broke, poor is your life situation has it to where you can't get on your feet. Broke is you messed up, and within 6 months, a year, or 2 years, you're going to be back on the path to financial freedom. And I've done videos with Michael Zuber and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord where we talk about, if you take everything away, what would you do? And we've all said, get a job, get income, secure 30-year fixed rate debt on buy and hold rentals, and go back to financial freedom. If you have somebody who's a millionaire and somebody who's a blue collar worker and somebody who's homeless, and you take away everything, 5 years from then, you're probably going to have a millionaire, a blue collar worker, and a homeless person. It's like our mindset sets up our pattern. We need to break that pattern. And now we've got things like YouTube University, where it's a lot easier to get out of where we came from. So sorry for the segue off of the FI stuff, but I think her financial journey was important too. Larry, I'm considering a joint venture with high-income $200,000 friend who's novice at real estate and rents past 20 years. Plan on our first joint venture deal, house hack, multifamily, loan in his name. How do you handle, what if our deal goes to zero? How do you handle the question of what if our deal goes to zero? Has property values ever dropped to zero? The biggest housing crash in my lifetime was 2008, and they went down 30%. And it took 2 years to get there. Buy and hold investors, when the property values went down, did good. Rents went up in 2009 and 10 because a lot of people in 2008 went through foreclosure, which created more renters. More renters means more demand on a limited supply. You own the supply as a buy and hold investor. So if property values drop, it's not that I would be happy. Property values dropping means that somebody's being hurt somewhere. But I would get to go to my county tax assessor and say, hey, values are down. My tax obligation should go down in scale with it, argue with that. That doesn't mean rents are going to go down. Rents are probably going to go up. So that's how I would handle that question is how long has this person been alive? And in your entire life, can you point out a time where the value of the investment went to zero? Stocks can go to zero. A business can go bankrupt. But a rental it burns to the ground, you have insurance. I think that would be the track I would take is, in the history of real estate, it has never happened. A big adjustment would be 30%. And if you're buying and holding to not sell, it's like with the stock market. When a stock drops and you sell it, you take a loss because you sold it. If it drops and you hold on to it for long enough for it to come back up, you don't take a loss. So time is also a factor there. But that is a normal concern of people who haven't looked into real estate, is, it could drop to zero and I lose all my money. Or worse, it could drop to zero and I have this mortgage for a couple $100,000 or several $100,000. But if you get into the logic of it, of the value of property, and that in the history of the country, it has never gone to zero. The biggest drop was 30%. And that increased rental demand. I think that's kind of a way around that. I would point out with your friend the 4 ways that rentals pay you. Because right now, if they're making 200,000 a year and they've been renting, either they're not investing at all, or they've been investing in probably stocks or retirement account. And so let's do a really quick comparison. Cash flow. You're buying an investment property for cash flow. If you're going to house hack, it's reducing or eliminating your housing costs. But you're getting cash flow now. If you buy stocks, dividend stocks have a 5 to 7% cash flow, and then it's taxed. Where most rentals, the ones that I'm going for, are at least a 10% cash on cash return after expenses and after taxes. And then appreciation. If you buy $100,000 worth of stocks and $100,000 in real estate, if the $100,000 in stock goes up 10%, you made $10,000. If you sell, if the $100,000 that you invest in real estate goes on a small multifamily, you're using leverage and you put down 25%. That means you actually control an asset worth $400,000. And if it goes up 10%, you made $40,000 instead of 10 if you sell or add equity for a cash out refinance or home equity line of credit. So that money is yours. Then there's principal pay down. When you buy stocks, tenants don't pay that off for you. When you buy real estate, tenants pay off the mortgage. And then look at all the tax benefits of real estate. Your friend's making $200,000 a year. That means he's probably paying $70,000 in taxes. So his take home's around $130,000. If he made $200,000 in real estate, he would take home $200,000. That's a big selling point. Yeah, hope that helps. Okay. Janelle, howdy. Or Jamil. Sorry, Jamil. Glad you have recovered now. Yeah, my voice is back a little bit. For binder strategy, how long did you wait on vetting inherited tenants before implementing it? Our initial impression of tenant was she was rude and untidy. So I have got a 5-minute video on my channel called The Binder Strategy, and then I have a 20-minute video on tenant request rent increase. That's one that I do like a course. That's part of the one rental at a time course. That's more structured. And I talk about when you inherit tenants, I go in the first month, and that's where you're vetting. So you're right. That's when you find out they're untidy, they're rude, it's not somebody you want to keep. Do they pay on time? Do they have noise complaints? Do they call you for trivial things? Like, you're finding out if you want to have them as a tenant. But they're also vetting you. You're the new landlord. So I do things like replace the door locks, which I'm making a video on which coated door locks I use, and motion sensor LED lights in the exterior. And I ask the tenant if there's anything that they would fix if they own the place, because there might be something small like new blinds or something that matters to them. And you can do a small expense to let them know that you are going to be taking care of the place, so that when you do the binder, for me, it's usually about 2 months later. First, you're bound by the lease, the existing lease. So if they've got a lease that goes up until June, you can't do anything until, I would do it 90 days before June, so that you have the talk and then you give them 90 days notice for the rent change. But if they're month to month, I would still wait 2 months to have that vetting period. So right about the end of that second month is when I would do the binder strategy, if you want to keep the tenant. If not, this is where you go. I'm giving you 60 days or 90 days, not renewing your lease. You need to find a place to move. And it's either so you're going to do a rehab, or you're going to move in, or whatever the regulations or requirements are in your area to give a non-renewal. Jeremy, insurance annuities for the very rich and over-insuring everything for the poor. Exactly. Insurance is like interest. If you understand interest, you get paid. And if you don't understand interest, you pay it. And insurance is an industry that makes money on people who don't understand it. Chester, the above comment is in reference to the Alex comment about 15 things. Okay, good. That's just a what is that, a porn site link or something? I thought that was someone's name, and I was going to try to. Ja понимаете по-русски? No, я говорю не очень хорошо. So I probably would have butchered that because I can't read it. Jeremy, I enjoy restoring Amish furniture here in Indiana for Airbnb, both fun and useful in your world. It has some wow factor, I bet. Yeah, one of our, he's now our regional director of our school. He manages an area. His hobby is he makes these wooden bed things, and it's really cool. It's good with his hands. Brett, you often mention you put in second in line offers. Will you expand on that, please? How well has that worked? 50% of my deals close. I have 3, so almost 50% of my deals, I was in second position. Make an offer on a rental or on a property, and the selling agent was nice enough to tell my agent, we have a higher offer, which is your offer, your opportunity to say, oh, well, great, I'll raise mine by $20,000 or whatever. Or you can put in an escalation clause saying I'll go up 20,000 in increments of 1,000 as long as it's above the other person's bid. But what I do, because I chased my numbers to that point, that's what it was worth. Any higher wouldn't have made sense. When I make an offer and the seller comes back, listing agent says, we have a better offer, I say to my agent, please send an email saying that my offer still stands. That puts me in second position, just in case first position, the person they currently have a contract with, falls through. This can be the person couldn't qualify for financing. The property didn't hit what they appraised at, and the buyer wasn't willing to adjust, and the seller wasn't willing to adjust for whatever reason. Or the new buyer thought, I'm going to get my offer accepted by making a super high offer, but then I'm going to demand a new roof and a new foundation and new water heaters and paint the whole house. And when all those demands go in, my offer's in second position. For whatever reason, they've fallen through. 3 of my properties, I made the offer, was told no, said I was in second position. A couple of weeks later, they come back and they say, hey, does your offer still stand? Because you said you were in second position. I said, absolutely. And I've gotten those 3 that way. So for me, an effective strategy. Knock it on. Howdy. No code on? One of those. Got to figure out how to say your name too. I want to start building furniture for your personal home. Nice. Adam, I don't know that I speak any. I don't think I speak English very well. I thought I spoke Spanish because I grew up in Southern California working in the onion fields. And when you're the little white kid taking everybody's job and they kick your butt every day, you learn how to speak Spanish pretty quick. But I traveled to Colombia and I realized I do not speak Spanish. Because Spanish, like Mexican Spanish, California Spanish, whatever it was, Tex-Mex version of it, stop is alto. You see a stop sign, it says alto. You get to Colombia, it says pere, P-E-R-E, pare, however you say it. Like, what's that word mean? And then try to say things to people. Some things were different. So Spanish, I love Russian. I want to go to somewhere, but I don't like cold. I want to find a place where you go where the people speak Russian and where it's warm. I speak a little Dutch. Ik spreek een beetje Nederlands, maar ik spreek het niet zo goed. And when the new owners of our CDL school bought it, the husband is American, raised in England, and the wife is from Holland, so she spoke Dutch. And I thought, well, I'm going to take six months. I downloaded the Pimsleur app. I learned Dutch. I watched 6 months worth of YouTube cartoons like Dora the Explorer in Dutch. And so after a year later, I thought, hey, I'm going to talk to my boss in Dutch in her native language in front of her parents and ask a simple question. And, hoeveel personen zijn in uw gezin? And her mom punches my new boss. She goes, he's known you for a year. He speaks Dutch. You've been married 10 years. Why don't you speak Dutch? It was funny. And I love sign language. I think sign language is a great way, like an intimate language. These are languages I want to learn. I just don't know anybody well enough to interact to actually be good at them. So what I need to do is move to Russia and spend a year in a small town way off the track where there isn't a lot of tourists, where if you don't speak Russian, you don't eat. And then go spend a year in Colombia. And I don't know if I'd go to Holland. Like I said, don't like cold, but maybe a certain time of the year. Brett, Dion Epiphany. When you take $100,000 out of the bank and put it into a rental property, the money isn't gone. It's just in the bank. It isn't in the bank anymore. Right. There was, like I said, I think, when did I talk about it? There was something that it was an interview. It was an interview on a podcast the other day called The Happy Trucker. So it should be coming out soon. It's about truck driving, but I wanted to talk about financial freedom as a truck driver. And we were talking about something my brother said that stopped me from investing for 10 years. My brother said a sentence and it stopped me from looking at real estate from 30 to 40. He said, When I buy a rental property, and that's how he did it. He reached financial freedom by buying 10 rental properties. He used a home equity line of credit, bought a rental property, then paid off the home equity line of credit, bought another one, did over and over and over. He said, 11 years later, I get my money back. And I thought that was stupid. He had his money. He's going to buy a rental property so that in 11 years he can get his money back? Like, he had it now. What's the point? Until my brain finally caught on. He still had his money. He was talking about doubling it. He took his money from the bank where it was getting him almost nothing in interest, and he put it in a rental property where it's getting him cash now, appreciation, principal pay down, and in 11 years he profited as much as he invested. It's the way he looked at it. He could have sold, cashed out, refinanced, taken out a second HELOC or something to get that money out. It was still his. It was just in the property instead of in the bank. And so at 40, I was like, oh, I'm not spending money when I buy a rental property. I'm moving money, putting it to work. So thanks, Brett. Yeah, that's one of my big epiphanies too. Steve, howdy. Is getting a CDL and driving a good seasonal part-time portable gig after early retirement? It is. So if anybody here's a truck driver, I don't want to insult you. I drove semis for 17 years and never really ever called myself a truck driver. To me, mentally, a truck driver is 400 pounds, gets in a Swift truck, and he's gone for 3-4 weeks at a time. I always drove a local job. That's why our company tagline is be home every night. I focus on local work. So I don't think anybody should drive over the road because you're paid by the mile, so you're never compensated for overtime. And it's a weird job that I wouldn't do. But a local driving job, there are some great seasonal ones. And depending on where you're at is what season they're going to work. If I had a choice as a truck driver, I would choose to drive summer seasonal so that you're not chaining up in the winter as much, which is probably the closest thing to actual work that most truck drivers do. There are some, if you drive for Coke or Pepsi, you never open a trailer. It's got a seal on it. You check the seal against your clipboard and you just move the trailers. I was on track to make $115,000 the year that they went on strike. So it can make good money, and it's really easy to get those seasonal jobs because the employers are looking for a way to not pay as much overtime. And when certain things pick up for seasons, like if you want to drive in the winter and you can deliver Christmas trees, when drive in the summer, that's when a ton of companies are looking for people, especially for construction, because in certain areas that's when it can happen. The struggle is not wanting, not going back into full-time work because the employers are going to be trying to push for that. I like driving a truck, getting paid to listen to the radio or an audiobook. Most of my jobs until I got my CDL were outside. My family runs tree services. My brothers ran tree services. I was the youngest, did the manual labor. So I joined the Marine Corps because that was easier than working in trees. And the Marines was outside most of the time. Law enforcement, you're outside most of the time. I finally got into the semi, the cab of a semi, and was like, wow, I'm warm, I'm dry, like very, very easy job. Jeremy, short term is certainly a job, requires a perfect system to not get daily headaches. Currently manage 20 for others and 7 for yourself. I have a partner, 2 cleaners, and 2 other partners in another zip. Yeah, having cleaners with a flexible schedule would be important. I have a friend, that's what she does. She works a full-time job, but she has a cleaning business, and she does some office buildings, but mostly she does Airbnb turnovers. Eichel Cigar? There's probably a phonetic there that I'm missing too. Howdy. Super lazy. Full-time work, nonprofit, family and investing, and YouTube channel. So when I was in the Marines and they downsized after Desert Storm, I had no income. Me and my son lived in a bus behind my brother's house. So homeless, basically. When I got laid off from the police department, I had found out just before that, I'd found out about $89,000 in bad debt in my name. There was actually a time where my ex didn't pay any of the bills for 3 months before she moved out. So I had to catch up on 3 months worth of bills, found out a bunch of debt, lost my source of income. And that, I've never had what I would consider like a mental breakdown or something, but that stress of where's the food going to come from next week is a nightmare, right? It's something that some of us have at some different points in our life. That's what I don't want. I'm so lazy. I don't want to have to work. Uh, so yeah, fingers in a lot of pies so that I don't have to work. Rob. Brandon Turner's landlord book says I should get a business account to separate your rental funds from your personal funds, but I don't use an LLC. The more organized you are, the better chance you have at success. That's probably true. And that's probably where Brandon was going. I have his book. I've listened to it a dozen times. I mean, it's his book on rental property investing and his book on managing rental properties. I mean, he's got some good content, right? And there's some chapters like where mostly I'm audible, but there are times I've gone to, I wish I had it here. I have most of my other books here. But there are some sections where I've got highlighter in the book so that I can pull it up. But this can be as complex or as simple as you like. For me, with 16 rental units, I have a long list of reasons why I don't have an LLC, and I will someday make a rant on no LLC, but not today. I'm actually waiting until I have 10,000 subscribers because I don't want to piss off 5,000, and I want to have at least 5,000 on my channel left when those ones leave. But 16 rental units, I have one checking account, one savings account, one credit card that I pay off daily so that I never have a late payment and I never carry a balance. I have one Excel spreadsheet with a tab for expenses and a tab for income that I send to the CPA. And that's it. Check your local area. You might have to keep deposits in a separate interest-bearing account. That used to matter a lot more when accounts were paying 4 to 10%, depending on how much you had in there and how long it was there, because that money's not yours. The deposit belongs to the client. And so if it could earn interest, it has to. But I know some people who have this property, has this savings account, and has this money to run its checking in and out, and this and that. And then I don't have the bandwidth for that, the mental bandwidth to handle that much confusion. I have a savings account. Mentally, $30,000 of that is a reserve. Above that 30,000, this is the investing fund. As simple or as complex as you want. But if I was going to write a book and talk to the most neutral of clients, I would, of readers, I would want to say, the more detail oriented you are, the better chance you have at success. If you had an account for each one and you can handle it, yes, you're less likely to make a mistake. But I would be personally more likely to make a mistake if I had to manage that many accounts. Jeremy, you do the same. Cannot eat at business lunches. End up taking it home. Yep. And possibly business partner looking at you sideways. Yep. Rob, will a personal separate account do just as well? It's what works for me. Yep. Julie, that is your favorite thing about being financially independent is no alarm clock. Awesome. Knock it on. How do you pay yourself from your rentals? It's all in one account, just one. So my expenses come out of that account. Expenses that are mine just come out of that account. Expenses that belong to a rental go on the spreadsheet so that the CPA knows what those expenses were for. A lot of the having separate accounts and having the documentation was a lot more important in 1990 to 2000 because you had to have a paper trail. Well, now you can print out your bank statement pretty much any day of the month. You don't have to wait for a bank statement to come. You can just print out and you can pick a time period in your bank. The electronic access is there for credit cards, for your banks, for PayPal and Venmo, for Cash App and Zelle. To give, when I was audited, it was 2014 or 15, end of 14, so it might have been 15. And even then, that was what, 6 years ago, 7 years ago? I just said, here's my account stuff. And they were like, oh, that's all we need. And if they had questions, yes, I still had receipts. But I just pay myself from the same account. I don't have any LLCs. If I had LLCs, then it becomes very different. You need to separate the income. You need to separate the expenses. You need to track it. You need to pay yourself from the LLC. There's all kinds of reasons why I don't have an LLC. Since it's all in my name, it's all my income. Jeremy, still have to have an alarm clock until I get at least an on par for your kids. Nice. One of my daughters almost wasn't on par. I thought it would have been a good experience because it was going to be in some other country. So I wouldn't have called them an on par, and I'm probably saying that wrong. don't speak French. That's not a language I can understand. Tried Mandarin too. I don't have the ear for Mandarin. I couldn't understand even the, yeah. I tried to learn Thai before going to Thailand. And I get to Thailand, everybody spoke English. Thai was hard. There is, in Spanish, you have male and female, like hermano, hermana, you have your brother and your sister. But in Thai, men say things a certain way and women say it differently. Like a man ends his sentence in klap, like, kap kun klap to say thank you. And a girl says kap kun ka because it's different. And my brain doesn't have the capacity to understand. It's a beautiful language, but I'm glad they spoke English when I got there. Angel. Oh, no, I was talking about the on par. I used house hacking to get through the police academy. I live a little over an hour away from the police academy. So doing a 12-hour day, driving to there and then doing the 12-hour day and then driving back and then studying for the exams or whatever, I would just sleep in the parking lot sometimes. But to do this, imagine how much it would cost a single parent with 3 kids to have 24-hour a day live-in daycare. So instead of having a daycare, I rented out our 4th bedroom to a young couple, and in exchange, they didn't pay rent. In exchange, all they had to do was basically be live-in daycare for my kids, and it was, make sure they make it on the bus, make sure that they eat, and make sure the kind of basic stuff. So I house hacked way before I was an investor. Angel, after you fill your rental 30K reserves, do you keep adding to this account or save the money towards the next buy? It goes into the same account, but it's for the next buy. And it's in the beginning, it added up very slowly, sometimes $600 or $1,000 a month. But as that income snowball happens and the rental profit comes in, so the beginning of this video was designed to help make work optional, right? And a lot of people talk about having a 10% or a 15% savings rate. My goal when I started on the path to financial independence, not even freedom, just independence, was at least a minimum of a 100% savings rate. If you have a job and you can't save 100% of that money, you need that job. You're not free. If you're saving 10%, yeah, that'll help over time. If you're saving 20, 30, 40. So as rental income started coming in, I started needing less and less of my money. So once the rental income passed my living expenses, my rental income pays for my living. 100% of W-2 income, every single penny made from work, goes to the investing fund, saving for the next deal. So in the beginning, rent slowly built up to where I needed less and less of the work. So as I needed less and less of the work, the rent's built up. Once it passed it, everything of rental income above my living expenses is also saved for the next deal. So first duplex to second duplex was over 2 years. Next duplex was under 2 years. A year, then a fourplex in a year, then pay off a house in a year, pay off by 17 years left on a mortgage, pay it off in less than a year, because the income snowball starts to kick in to where now I've only bought 1 duplex in 2021. I could have bought another one towards the end, but I put my buying on hold, helped a friend, a handheld, walked her through buying a duplex, just did a video comparing her duplex to my duplex that I bought in 2018. Explaining how she paid $555,000, I paid $298,000, and she got the better deal. But now I'm back on the prowl for the next purchase, and my goal is to save up enough in that savings. So money from W-2 income, rental profit above what it costs me to live, all going into an account. My next property, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, because I've said many times, I wish my properties cost more. When I first started investing, I was looking for the places I could afford. And then I realized I want to buy places that get a 10% or better cash on cash return. And if you buy a $100,000 place and it costs you $20,000 to buy it, you're going to make $2,000 next year. That's 10% of your $20,000 down payment. It's a little more than that because of closing costs and everything, but you're getting the idea. I'm putting down 20% to buy it. If I buy $1 million place and I put down $250,000, next year I'm going to make $25,000, 10% of what it cost me to acquire it. So I want my properties to cost more as long as that cash on cash return scales with it. So I'm saving now, and I might do a home equity line or a cash out refinance on my one paid off property to have enough money. I want my next property to cost more than $1 million. but it's the income snowball that's making that possible. T-stamps. Howdy. Hey, Dion, I'm not going to lie, but I'm completely discouraged. I may not be able to afford a home on $48,000 a year salary in Sacramento, California. I'm actively working to gain SEO clients to screen income. It's tough. Sacramento is an expensive market. Tacoma is an expensive market. It would be really hard to buy a place in Tacoma for $48,000 a year, but concentric circles. You have Tacoma, Spanaway, Graham, Eatonville. You might be an hour out from Tacoma and you start hitting where 48,000 is enough to qualify for an FHA loan because you can have a lower income ratio, lower debt to income. Man, words are hard. Lower credit score, higher debt to income ratio, and still be able to use those. And they just raised FHA loan values because people aren't able to buy in some areas. So yes, in Sacramento, I don't know that I could afford to buy there. And my goal right now is to buy $1 million property, but I still don't think I could afford to buy in Sacramento. But what about Kern County? Get further out. How far out in your circle would you have to go until you found a place? And if you're only making $48,000 a year, how many other places can you work where you can make that? An entry-level driver, like starting right out of school, the over the road. And if there's any on here, I'm not talking about you. I don't mean to insult anybody. It's a crappy job nobody should do. You're going to make like $50,000 a year to start over the road. But a local job where you're home every night, the entry-level wage now is about 80 grand. So you could almost double your income by just driving a truck. You might have a job that you like and you don't want to go drive a truck, or you don't have the ability to, but there's a lot of jobs at 48,000 where you might be able to move to another area where it doesn't cost as much as Sacramento. Because Sacramento, that area of California, you are paying for weather. So Graham Stephan moved from California to Las Vegas because it's going to save him literally millions of dollars in taxes. Meet Kevin is staying in California because his spouse doesn't want to leave the weather. At least this is what a YouTube content creator puts out as their reasoning. We never know what's actually behind the scenes, but they're paying for that weather tax. So, I mean, you might have a few different options. And if you like, I'm going to put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out and maybe we can set up a call and see what your options are. But I don't know about being discouraged. I wasn't making a lot of money either. Another option I had was, and again, Sacramento might be too expensive to do what I did. I moved from my house into an apartment. I rented my house out for 2 years so that I can get rental income on my tax returns so that I could use the rental income on the duplex I was purchasing in my debt to income ratio and in my ability to qualify for the amount to buy. Because at that time, when I first started, I was only making $17 an hour. By about the 2 years, I was probably making, it was still close to 70. It wasn't like 3 years later that it finally went up. But don't be discouraged. It is tough. And they say this on BiggerPockets a lot. Reaching financial freedom by investing in real estate is not complicated. It's actually pretty simple. I mean, if I can understand it, it is simple. But it's not easy. It does take discipline. It does take a plan. It does take understanding that time is a part of this, the chronology of saving for a couple of years and figuring out how to get your income higher, get your debt to income ratio better, maybe having to move, maybe having to house hack, looking at your loan options. It's not complicated. It's just not easy. Chester, 15% of 23,000 is 3.45 thousand. Thank you. Thank you. So that's how much money I would be setting aside. Let me see. My chat moved. Sorry. $23, the Sanchez. How do you determine the reserves amount of your rentals? Why 30,000? Is it on a per unit basis? You can make this as complex or as simple as you want to. When I had 7 or less units, I figured the chances of a roof going bad at the same time as another roof going bad without having at least a couple of years to get ready for it is pretty small. But a water heater going out, a garage door not working, which I have to order a garage door, I'll remember. Going out with 7 units, that was 4 properties, 10,000. I was comfortable. I thought 10,000 will cover the mortgages if somebody's not paying rent. It'll replace a roof if I need it to. Once I got past that, it's that. So Murphy's law is if something can go wrong, it's going to, right? The fourth corollary is if a sequence of events can go wrong, they will end in the worst possible order. So 10,000 wasn't enough once I started having 5, 6, or 7 properties. So I raised it to 30, not per unit, just if 2 roofs went out, if a roof and a water heater or a foundation cracked or a septic needed a full replacement, I have the funds to do that. The reason I don't want it to be much higher is anything above that amount should be working, making me money. I would feel more comfortable with 50,000 in reserves. I would feel great if I just took my savings right now and just said, okay, all that savings, I'm not buying another property. That's just going to be in my reserves. But let's just say, and I'm transparent. So I've saved up 250,000. So I might not have to do the cash out refinance on the single family to buy that next $1 million property, right? If I kept that 250,000 in the bank and I don't invest it, I'm costing myself $25,000 a year every year for the rest of my life. And it grows. That first year is a 10% cash on cash return. After that, I'm averaging over 20% cash on cash right now overall on the whole portfolio versus where I'm at. That opportunity cost from not investing would hurt. So I like keeping 30,000 as a reserve. And it'll grow as the portfolio grows or as I don't have a job. Picked nice, round, simple numbers. You can make this as complex as you want. You can look at your gross value, your gross rents, your per unit, your per door, your whatever you want to call it. My brain has to make room for Star Trek Voyager, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, Discovery, Stargate Atlantis. Like there's a bunch of nerd stuff in here. Don't have room to make my investing difficult. And the way I put it is I am not buying a job. I'm investing. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm an investor. I would make a terrible entrepreneur. Some people say they want to be an entrepreneur because they don't want to have a boss. Well, congratulations. Every one of your customers that has access to Yelp is now your customer, is now your boss. And they say they want to be an entrepreneur because they don't want to work 40 hours a week. Well, congratulations. You're now working 80 hours a week. So there's all kinds of reasons why I'm not an entrepreneur. So my investing needs to be simple. The more simple it is, the more likely I am to continue. That's why I chose 10 and then 30 and probably 50 when I stop working. It's a good question. Greg, howdy. T-Stamps, remember you can live where you want and invest where it makes sense. You're right. So house hacking at a distance might not be as easy as an option. I have a video on how to house hack it at a distance. It's possible. But maybe investing in, saving up and then buying a place in Ohio, or, I've got a friend who did what did she do? A reverse. She was going to do a reverse 1031 exchange, selling a property in Washington. She had 2 properties that she owned in Ohio. She bought a third. It's very expensive here. She's getting a great return. The problem with investing at a distance is developing that team of people that you actually trust. That's the start. What market do you have somebody that you trust to work with? So that's definitely an option. Jeremy, previous working in healthcare, my advice is to get a full physical if you are mostly healthy versus some online exam policy. It will make a big cost difference. They never let the policy lapse. Then never let the policy lapse. Perfect. Knock it on. Are you getting a Lambo bug? No. So I had the Corvette, which is the poor person's Lambo, I guess. And I wanted to support Kentucky, where they make them. That fed a bunch of people. And so I wanted that, but I live in Washington. The rain spray was above your head from every car you drove by. And there were 2 or 3 months where you have ice on the road and those cars are just not made for it. So I don't have the Lambo bug. I did have the Tesla truck bug though, on the original version. And I love my F-250. It's got every extra out there that you could put in it. Super comfortable. And the other thing that I mentioned at the very beginning of this video was some people in the FIRE community, financial independence, retire early, talk about living close to where you work so you can ride a bike to work. If there's ever an accident between a bike and an F-250, the bike loses. And And there might have been a time in my life when I didn't care because I thought I was going to have to work until I died. But once I reached financial freedom and I realized I get to actually enjoy every day for the rest of my life, I don't think I want to risk it by riding a bike. Um, Jeremy, you should also look into federal subsidies. Got first-time home buyer options too. Use screen. Thanks, Dion, for the expense breakdown and reserve account explanation. In your 35% expense ratio, I am including property taxes. Oh, well, yeah. So, sorry. I do PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is the mortgage. That's just paid. So I don't know. I don't even know how the percentages work out for that. I do have the paid off property, and the insurance on it is $28 a month. So I mean, it's like 300 and something bucks a year. And the property taxes are 1,900. So I set aside $200 a month for taxes and insurance on the paid off property. So there's probably a percentage there. It's rented for 2,200, and I set aside 200 for that. So I'm at $400. So 400 is set aside for everything on a $2,200 rental. Not a math guy, so I'm not sure what that percentage is, but that makes sense. And then you have management. I self-manage. So 35, and probably sounds like we're pretty close to the same. Nakadon, I heard you say you might increase your 700 vehicle account. Right. Yeah, 700 has been working for the last couple of years, but I don't know what the next vehicle will be. And I like trucks. I'm a truck person, and trucks are not cheap. Andres, howdy. Please make a video going over insurance coverage. Yes, I need to. And so I covered some insurance in one of my last live streams, and somebody very graciously reached out and said, "Hey, I've been an insurance broker for 20 years. Here's some self-education." And it was a really good detailed email, and I'm so grateful that he sent this, and it was a ton of information. And it was kind of like, how much do you set aside for reserves? Is it per unit? Is it whatever? You can make this as confusing as you want. I was trying to say insurance costs more on the property you live in because you're insuring your own personal items. And he had a good explanation of, it actually costs more to insure a rental you don't live at. It's kind of like getting a mortgage. It's cheaper you get a better interest rate on the place you live than there. So it might cost more to insure the property if you don't live there. But the premium, like the basic math of it is, I'm also insuring my personal items. So where I live costs me more money. When I move out, it probably didn't reduce, I guess, as much as the policy for where I live to insure the property in the building, but it was too much thinking. Like, I need to make a really simple, here's the way I look at it as an investor to buy rental insurance. This is the amount that I want in slip fall coverage. This is how much I would own before I would get an umbrella policy. This is how much I do full building replacement, not just it's a really good breakdown, but like at the kindergarten level. And then, I don't remember his name because I suck with memory stuff. That insurance broker that sent the email, that took the time to actually like share his knowledge, I'm going to bribe them into coming and doing a video so we can get like, here's the actual real way it works, not just as an investor, here's how it's been working for me. And so we'll have both then. But yeah, I definitely want to make that. Ustream. Renee Collins attended USC. Okay. Must have missed that one. Phil, howdy. I've seen the sign and heard a bit of well-pronounced Russian. How do you discover your ear for language? Seems like a useful hobby. So I have an ear for some languages. There are some, like I said, I tried Mandarin, and like the word M-A, means like 6 different things, and based on tone and inflection, you know what they're talking about, and my brain can't handle it. Like like a little bit of that original, I just can't get it. But when I hear someone talking in Russian, something in my brain says that's a cool sounding language. When I heard Dutch, I was like, okay, so this is, I just like the phonetics of it. So there are some that I like, and it is a useful hobby. The hard part is finding people who will also learn that language or interact with me on that level, and then explain to me. Like, I love sign language. And when I talk to somebody who's deaf or hard of hearing, they call me an exact signer, which is kind of a slur, almost an insult. I mean, not an insult, but like they're saying, okay, that's not the grammar. Like I don't have it nailed down. Like I can dock it, but it's it's probably faster to text it, right? Because you need that, what do they call it? Full immersion. You just need like a good 6 months to a year where you can't do anything but speak that language. Um, and the best way I've heard it is once you start thinking in that language, then you speak that language. Ace, howdy. Building credit has been very long and hard. Nice beard. Thank you. Actually, there was some sign language explaining why I have a beard in one of my videos. But building credit is important. There are some pretty good videos on doing that. One of the things I like to do, because you're maybe talking build credit history, you can do things where you piggyback and become a signer on someone else's credit card. Usually, like with your 18-year-olds, you put them on your credit card so they get your history. It doesn't trick lenders right away. They can recognize when that's a thing, but it does help start building the score. One of the things I did that added over 30 points to my credit score was call my credit card and any loans that you have and ask for a higher loan amount. Raise that value, but don't spend more on the card, because utilizing a card for 10% or less of its value has a good impact on your score. Going above 10% starts to lower that score. And I have some company cards where sometimes we spend 17 grand in a day because we needed whatever to happen that day. That's tied to my name. Raise that limit, do the Amex Black where there is no limit. So all of a sudden now you're never hitting that 10% utilization. Or the Bank of America card raised it from 5,000 to 11,000. I'm still spending the same amount of money, but I keep it below that percentage, and that can help your credit too. But that's something Graham, Stephan, and Meet Kevin, one of their early videos, had some really good breakdowns on credit stuff. Adam, thank you. Really appreciate the time you spend with all of us. I'm happy to be here and hoping that the information helps somebody, maybe two somebodies. Michael, howdy. Tell us how to get those gains. Investing, and this is something David Green said, so I don't want to steal his thing. I want to reiterate and give him credit. Working out and investing don't have to be complicated. You can go to the gym and you can develop this routine of, I'm going to do 7 pyramids where I go up and down and I scale this numbers and I'm going to use these weights, and or you could just do curls and push-ups. Like the basics of working out, and maybe slowly building up strength and retention will get you stronger. Investing doesn't have to be, let me see if I can wholesale and flip and build some capital, then I can do the BRRRR method, and I can recycle my capital and then save up money, use it as a down payment on a rental, collect rents, rinse, repeat. Like the basics of working out and the basics of investing work. How complicated we want to make it is a personal choice. Sue B, how can you make sure you don't buy too fast? Should you space out your purchases? Sometimes the lenders will tell you that you're buying too fast and tell you to space it out. Your ability to save up down payments, build reserves, and have the closing costs, I mean, those are factors. Debt to income is a good one. In those first 2 years, remember, they sometimes won't recognize rental income in your debt to income ratio. So however much you're making from your W-2 can be a limiter for those first 2 years. I would be just as afraid, this might be too strong, concerned with scaling too slow as I was with going too fast. Because remember, that opportunity cost, if you're saving up money and it's sitting in an account and it makes you feel really good that you have this safety net sitting there, it's not making you the money it would make if it was in an investment property. So figure out what chronology and timeline that works best for you and go with that. Jimena. Hola, Jimena. ¿Cómo está? I hope your mom enjoyed life. My mom did. I had a great relationship with my mom. Yeah, thank you. Although she was Catholic and I was Catholic, I was an altar boy, and I'm no longer Catholic. That did not go over very well. My brothers and sisters thought I was insane that I would argue with her, but she loved it. She used to get beat red in the face arguing religion with me. That's my most fond memories with her. Jeremy. Learn to crawl up ladders to get into second-story bathroom windows at 4 because I could get in easily Let my family in downstairs when landlord changed the locks. Oh, that's a life skill. Yeah. We never had any change the locks. The funny thing with the places we moved out of as a kid, years later, drive by the property, the barn would still be there, and some of the houses were torn down. So, still hopeful. Howdy. Love hearing about your childhood story, especially that your mom ended up getting a bill pay. Yeah, it was great. She loved her job, worked there till she retired, had a pension. Ended up poor rich. Is that a thing? New money. She bought a double wide in the mobile. So we moved from her little tiny trailer that we moved into there into a big double wide in the trailer park, Roseman, California, the Thunderbird. It's as cliche as you can get. Literally white trash in the trailer park in this double wide. She took her double wide, bought like a rock, like dirt out in the desert, and moved it out there and hauled water. But she had her own little thing. She raised wolves, she had pigs, and she did a little ranch farm thing. She did it how she wanted to. It was great. Tiger, smash the like button. Thank you. I would appreciate that. That lets somebody out there that maybe YouTube algorithm is going to share it with someone else. Michael, you made it. Howdy. Me too. Dawn. Oversharing is the best. Hearing stories of modest upbringing from someone achieving FI of any sort is really inspiring, and we're all friends here anyway. Am I right? I would hope so. And I'll overshare. Don't sue me, bro. Because the thing I'm never worried about if I share something embarrassing from my childhood. I can't control how I grow up. And I wouldn't change it for the world. But I share numbers. Like, this is what the rent is. This is what the payment is. This is what the expense is. Don't sue me. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible so I could just say, here's how a rental works. Here's how the numbers work. I've had tenants watch my videos, watch my binder strategy videos where I talk about how I got that tenant to pay more money. Just trying to be transparent with it. A minute. Yes. Chester. Reason why I say poor is a mindset is because of the point you made about if someone was to take everything away and they had to start all over, I believe is what and who someone knows how to build wealth. It's only a matter of time before knowledge kicks in. Absolutely. And at the back of the mind, something that's really good about reaching financial freedom and thinking, I could lose it all. That Mount Rainier could go off and rentals aren't so great in Washington or whatever, right? I would be starting over with experience. So when me and Michael Zuber and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord make the video on how would you start over if you lost everything, it was get a job with consistent income, to save a down payment, to house hack a property, to rinse and repeat every couple of years, and 10 years later, never have to work again. Like, doesn't matter if I was 20, 40, 50, that's how the math would look for me. Probably go faster because I wouldn't be starting from all the bad debt that I did, but same thing. Michael Smith, question. What cash on cash do you target? What would that change if your asset is in a very expensive market? I don't think the cash on cash target would change. There's a couple of reasons why I avoid a very expensive market. Like, I don't want to own Class A or Class B neighborhoods because in an economic downturn, those kind of people can move to a Class C neighborhood to save money. Hardly anybody's going to move to Class D because it's kind of a war zone and it's not safe to go there. So in bad times, I'm going to have more tenants. With a larger portfolio, I might start having, I might look at an A or a B as long as I know that I'm not dependent on that for my portfolio to succeed. But I would still shoot in my area. It would depend on the area. So if I looked at a more expensive area and the average income, like in my area, it's 5 to 8. I can find 5 to 8% cash on cash returning small multifamily. So I shoot for 10. If I found a super expensive area like San Diego, where you're lucky to find one that does a 1%, but I just for some reason had to invest there, I'd look for a 3 or a 4 and find that deal. At some point, though, the return is so small that real estate might not be the asset class to invest in that area, or that type of real estate might not be. Somebody is investing in each market successfully. I would figure out what was working there. It could be high rise. It could be syndication. It could be trailer park. It could be several different options. But what is working there? and what is their return, and then try to find the, like Michael Zuber says, do the work. Learn the market for 60 to 90 days, figure out what the area average is, and then shoot for better than that. Chester, moreover, I believe it's knowledge plus action that creates value. That's why I'm doing the daily discipline, even though I did it before finishing the ORAT course. Nice. Chester, Michael, Dion did a video recently on why buying a more expensive property can yield more than a cheaper one, right? So the cost of the property was more. It wasn't so much that, because they were literally 6 houses apart. So it wasn't that I went to a more expensive area. It was in 2018 when I bought mine, I paid less than 300,000. My friend just paid more than 550,000. Basically, kind of the same, just 6 houses apart. But my interest rates were twice as much, and her rents were twice as much. So, like, when you scale it out, her deal ends up being better, even though it costs more. My goal is to find a 10% cash on cash return, which mine was in 2018. It's a phenomenal return now because my rents have also doubled since then, and my interest rates have been refinanced. So, but I was looking at that first year to first year. Her cash on cash return year one is looking like almost 18%. It's a better deal, even though it costs more. I would have bought it at 10%. It's just how the rates and the rents worked out for her. Knockadon, short version of Northern Colorado. Northern Colorado Don. I'm gonna have to write that down because Don. Northern Colorado Don. I am gonna try to remember that. Like it. Chester. Maybe Vladivostok to try a Russian destination. I don't know where that is. I will have to look it up. Also, the hard part, though, is finding countries that don't hate Americans, or at least areas of countries. CJ Underwood, howdy. May have missed it in previous video. How do you handle pre-screening tenants? Do you use Google Forms? I use apartments.com. They do a credit check, an eviction check. It's free for the owner, the landlord, the person who owns the property, and it's $45 for the tenants, for the applicants. I used to use Cozy, and it was like $38 for the applicants. Apartments.com bought Cozy, and that's their current price. I've been able to go off of that. I've never really cared what a person makes for income, and I've said this in videos. I know people who make 6 figures who are late on every bill. And if you go off of income, you eliminate people who make the bulk of their money through tips, like bartenders, waiters, cosmetologists, stuff like that. I go with a high credit score, it's 700 or better. And even my Section 8 tenants, some people think that they're, for some reason, not going to have good credit. My one Section 8 tenant has an 830 credit score and no evictions ever. Those are my only 2 real criteria. And I've had pretty good luck with that. The people who have worked to get their credit score up will protect it. I have taken tenants with less than a 700 credit score, but I looked at their history. I looked at, there is a justifiable reason why their score is currently where it is. I'm looking for judgments, late payments, those kind of things. And so I'll take an overall picture, but it's kind of rare. Angel, you're such an inspiration. Thank you. Coming from such a complex background and still kicking. God bless. Thank you. Sometimes I think our childhood helps. I think the hardest teenagers I've experienced is very rich parents. Because the way I grew up, I could have got a job in a fast food restaurant. And as long as I made enough money to pay my rent and have a car and pay my bills, I was a success. I was better than where I was at as a kid. But if you grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and your house cost $2 or $3 million, and each car was $250,000, like your starter car was $100,000, and you're 18 and now you move out, what does that person do? What the heck can you do that comes close to what you were living like at 15? That's a hard childhood to overcome and figure out how to be productive. I have a friend whose dad was super rich, and he grew up boarding schools, everything that a rich kid can have, and then he turned 18 and his dad cut him off. like you're just done. You're not, this family has nothing to do with you. Kind of the basketball player that said, my kids aren't rich, I'm rich. Magic Johnson said that. I think it was him. Or Shaquille O'Neal. I'm not a sports guy. I don't get the sports ball references like Matt does. But my friend at 18 had that affluent life and then all of a sudden nothing is probably the richest person I know now, because he just had this drive of, I have to beat what my dad had. And I know a lot of other people that I think they would have fallen apart at that point, because a regular life compared to that childhood would be hard to compete. With me, like I said, one of the days I was most excited with my actual financial success was when I went to a restaurant and I thought, I'm going to have a Coke with my meal. Like, I'm actually going to pay for a drink and not just drink water at a restaurant. That was huge. Angel, how long do you wait to refi out of FHA if there's not enough equity to convert to conventional? So I've not used FHA. I've always used conventional because I like the idea of, with the one time I had an under 20% conventional, that the PMI would just drop off. With FHA, to refinance to conventional, I wouldn't refinance out of FHA until you had the equity to get rid of PMI. Unless it's been more than a year and you want to use your FHA loan to buy somewhere else, you can refinance to conventional so your FHA is usable again. But remember, in most cases, for a single family house or a single family house with an ADU, like an auxiliary dwelling unit, that time where there's two houses on one property, conventional is usually better than FHA because PMI will go away. And it's only 3% down if it's your first house, if you haven't owned a house for 3 years, and it's 5% down if you haven't. So 5% down is not much different than 3.5. It doesn't take that much to save up that difference. But if I had an FHA, I would only refinance if it was to get rid of PMI or because I wanted to use my FHA again. To use my FHA loan again or to get rid of PMI, right? Jones, making $17 an hour in my current job, 25 years old, getting CDL this year within the first quarter, hopefully come to MD. Love my memory. Went to school in Merca. Is that MD? It's not Montana. It's great. I love my brain. And teach you to drive a semi. Come on down. We're in Washington. When you go to get your CDL, please reach out to me and I'll tell you some companies to avoid, some schools to avoid, some tricks schools play to avoid. A lot of CDL schools are going to tell you how great it is to drive over the road, and what they won't tell you is that those over the road companies will pay the school up to $1,300 for every person you trick into going over the road. Local jobs pay more, and you can get a local job right out of school. You don't have to go over the road to get 2 years of experience. That's actually a myth. So please reach out whenever you're ready for that. Julie, just get another checking account, maybe at another bank. There you go. Jones, it's great content, ROI. Maybe the YouTube teacher's viewer how to drive a semi and get a CDL, get 100,000 plus views. So the channel that I was just interviewed on, the Happy Trucker, he's got like over 40,000 subscribers, and his videos get a ton of views. So there's a large component of truck drivers out there, and hopefully I didn't make any of them mad when I talked about how bad it is to drive over the road and how everybody should have a local job. But I don't have a filter. Rob, how's the $1 million house hunt going? I started about 3 weeks ago, and I haven't found one yet. So 3 weeks, not discouraged yet. My fear is such an amazing job opportunity is going to come up with like a duplex that would get a great return, and I'm not stupid. My goal is to buy $1 million property, but if a $400,000 duplex with 3 units on each side that will rent out for an amazing return, I'm going to spend my money. I'm going to invest my money by moving it from the bank into that property, and I'll miss out on the $1 million one. It's just a goal. That doesn't mean I'm going to make financial mistakes to get the goal. Emerson, howdy. Chester. Not all expenses have commensurate yield scaling, and yield scaling is critical. Absolutely. When you consider investing in Bellevue or SeaTac, King County is the black hole of investing. No light comes out of there. No regulation or rule has been made since I've lived in this state that would make sense as an owner in King County. So no. Snohomish, Pierce, Thurston, sure. But if somebody gave me a property in King County, I would sell it and buy something somewhere else. Um, but I also have oversharing. I have issues with crowds. I don't like big cities. So I don't know if that's the Marine Corps or law enforcement, but my mentality is in every 100 people, there are two sociopaths and one psychopath in 100 people. And you get into a city, that is a lot of 100 peoples. So I do tend to avoid larger cities too. Jeremy. So I already found my en par and I know her price. By the way, I have 8 kids for the 8 kids and house hacking, a version of house hacking that works with 8 kids because you don't have shared living space. I name my rental houses after the kids because they are going to get them. Next one will be the en par's name. Nice. Scooby 2. If you could start over, would you wait longer between each property and buy more expensive properties? Good question. I would house hack as soon as possible. The ultimate goal, no matter what the price of the property, would be to reduce or eliminate housing expenses. After that, would I wait longer? Maybe. I think I would raise my price. I would be raising the price as I saved up down payment, closing costs, and immediate repairs and reserves. As that number grew, I would be increasing what I could make offers on, and I would probably look for better deals. At least 10%, as the minimum, and then looking for better deals as I grew, knowing that there are certain thresholds. In my area, if you get a small multifamily for 300,000 or less currently, the cash flow is probably going to be terrible. That is going to be in an area where there is a reason why it costs that. But my $400,000 duplex, now that the binder strategy has been used, is getting a great return, and I wish it cost more. So yeah, kind of. I would be increasing that search as I saved. Jeremy. For those that are not homeowners, you might be able to sublet Airbnb with the right system in your lease or someone else's. Just be transparent and do the work to make sure the landlord is comfortable. I need to memorize or write down the BiggerPockets episode with a young lady who, that's what she does. It's short-term rental arbitrage. She leases a place, rents out the rooms on Airbnb. And yes, she admits when she first started, she just did it and then got caught and the landlord freaked out. And yeah, right, that's not cool. But she learned her lesson and now she goes to the owners and she says, look, I want to pay you this much money. It's guaranteed for the first year or whatever. And then I'm going to rent out the rooms and I'll take care of everything. As long as the owner is okay with it and you're transparent, like Jeremy said, that is a good way to get started without having to own the property. Jeremy, I was thinking Cuba, meet the right people and speak Russian and Spanish. Nice. Yeah, I have not thought of Cuba. That's an interesting one. Maria, howdy. With savings interest rates so low, where do you keep your cash reserves to make sure you have it available to invest when the opportunity comes along? Low interest savings account. I am not doing anything creative with that money. I don't want to take the time or the mental bandwidth to learn how to run any kind of fund where I could invest it and get some kind of return, but have that money available. I want to be able to make an offer and write an earnest check tomorrow and close in 10 days if it was in all cash. In the beginning, as it would save, I would start to think, okay, I need to find a place to put this money because it's not earning me anything. And then I would find the next place to buy. You could make a little bit more money if you took the time and energy, but just saving up the money and having it ready to pounce on that next deal that's going to get at least a 10% or better cash on cash return. For me, I don't mind the opportunity cost of having that money just sit in the bank. So I'm not doing anything creative with it. Michael Smith, 80,000 a year, $38 an hour, 40 hours a week. In your experience, are local drivers making that high of rate more like 24 hours? You're forgetting overtime. Most local drivers are starting off at 28, like Old Dominion's starting wage here in Washington is 28, 23 an hour. Training right out of school. So 1 month raise, 90-day raise, and it goes up from there. Yeah, so it's not quite the 24-hour. A couple of years ago, it was $24 an hour. Now it's in the $26 to $30 an hour. And if you get prevailing wage jobs, prevailing wage in King County and Pierce County is $56 an hour or 60 something bucks an hour. So if you're working on the base or on a school or on anything like that, The wages are significantly higher. But most your average trucking company is starting out around $28 an hour, and that's your entry level. You're starting in the truck. Um, Overtime is a factor. You do not get to work banker's hours as a truck driver. My first driving job was driving a log truck. I was doing residential tree service and logging with my family. Remember, youngest brother of the labor. I got out of the Marine Corps. I didn't have my CDL yet. I was doing this logging stuff, and I'd be soaking wet, freezing, and the log truck driver would show up nice and dry with his little cup of coffee and making 3 times the amount of money I was sitting in a truck. And I thought, how the heck do I do that? And it's gone up since then. Our instructors make more than what I was making 10 years ago now too. I mean, instructors don't make as much as drivers, but it's a lot easier to be an instructor. You don't load, you don't unload, you don't deal with receiving clerks, you don't deal with traffic unless you want to, and you actually get to take somebody who wasn't making any money and whose life was kind of upside down, and you spend 4 weeks with them teaching them how to drive a semi, and then the next month they're making over $28 an hour, and you get to watch their whole life get better. So the reward for being an instructor is a lot more than monetary. Jeremy, my insurance on my rentals is generally $1,000 per year at full replacement. Your personal house is $1,900, same deductible and similar-ish values. Notice on your house hacks that your insurance went down 40%. As soon as you move out, the insurance goes down. That's all I was saying. But there is a technical jargon aspect of lots of information that the 20-year broker is going to have and understand that I don't need to. It's kind of like a real estate agent. You know how many laws and regulations my agents have to know that I don't want to know? There's a long list of reasons why I'm not a real estate agent. Matthew. Howdy. You didn't miss the entire live stream. I'm still here. Jeremy. Lots to catch up on. Iomatic. Hola. Howdy. Should I refinance a rental to pull out equity to move to your next deal quicker? I have not done that. Matt and Mike have almost got me talked into doing it. And my thing is always, do you have a place to deploy the funds where the return is going to be good enough to make a profit on the property that you're buying and justify the added expense to the property you took the funds out of? Because while those funds are yours and they are sitting in there, when you take them out, you are now going to pay those funds back and pay that interest back. So that is an expense that lowers the cash flow on the first asset. Is that next asset good enough to justify both of those? Are you confident in your ability enough to do that? I wouldn't recommend it if you have your own house and you're buying your first or second rental, because that's when we make all of our glorious mistakes. And if you put your primary residence at risk because you're learning a strategy, that's a risk I wouldn't take. If you have 3 or 4 rentals and every time you buy one, you're getting the return you expect, and you know how to find a tenant, screen a tenant, place a tenant, get a lease, maintain a property, find a handyman, take care of emergencies, like you've got all that basics worked out, might make a little more sense to put your equity at risk if you have a place to deploy the funds. That's how I look at that. Troy, howdy. Thank you. The best live stream. Kedma, howdy. Definitely an investor over entrepreneur, so I can continue to work on what I love without worrying about a paycheck coming in or stopping. Love your down-to-earth approach and overcoming life's obstacles. Thank you. It's always weird trying to figure out from childhood, what do you share? Because there are obstacles. How do we get past those obstacles? Some of them are motivators, though. Like we used to, great grammar, huh? We used to move into the houses, fix the doors and windows, and wait for the owners to show up, right? So I remember as a kid going to friends' houses and listening to their parents talk about rent. And I thought, these are the richest people I've ever met. They save up enough money every month to pay rent. Every month. And so now there's some part of my brain that looks at where I live, this fourplex. I'm being paid to live here, and my tenants are way richer than I am, because every month they save up enough money to pay rent. So those are the kind of challenges where if you look at the mindset of it, it makes it really motivating to house hack, to think, I don't have to pay for housing. I don't have to pay to live somewhere. It is a little addicting. And I could move out of my unit and rent it out, take that amount of money and buy a house like Matt the lumberjack landlord did when him and his spouse, when him and Ashley moved into their house. They said, we're going to buy a house But Matt said the payment from where we're moving from needs to cover the payment of where we're living. So I stopped house hacking and got into a house. That's probably the only way I would do it. I actually looked earlier this year at buying a boat, a liveaboard, like a 36-foot bayliner, living in a marina, renting out my unit. The unit would pay for the slip and it would pay for the upkeep. It was enough money to pay for the slip rental and the upkeep. So what I would be out of pocket was buying the boat. But marina living is, people caught on that marina living is so much more cost effective than living on a house, that it's a 2 to 10 year wait for a liveaboard slip on almost the whole west coast of Washington. So not living in a boat. And okay, this is definitely an overshare. No, I'm not going to do that. There was a reason why the boat made sense for me. What do you classify as Class C area? So if you Google class of neighborhood, Brandon Turner, BiggerPockets has a really good write-up on the classes of neighborhoods. What kind of businesses are there? So if you got a Panera Bread and those kind of things, you're in the Class B. And if you have 7-Eleven and some of those kind of things, you're in Class C. For me, Class C is it's working class. Most of my tenants are law enforcement, military, teacher, disability with Section 8, post office. Like they have working jobs. And it's not fancy. You know, Class B and Class A, you know, like there's not that many in my area, Class B or Class A, small multifamily. Small multifamily are generally in residential areas where it's more not affordable, I guess is the term. But there are some war zones that I wouldn't own in. There's this one fourplex that keeps coming up on the MLS every time I see it. I was like, wow, that's a great price. I want to buy that fourplex. And then I remember it's on McNeeley Ave in Tacoma, where even with a police escort, I wouldn't go there to collect the rent. So I don't buy it. But yeah, Brandon Turner, class of neighborhood. And that article does a really good write-up on the classes of neighborhoods. I do want to make that video, and I'm going to make that video, but not today. But when I do that, I need like a week to research the exact thought process of what I classify each class at and why I chose Class C. And it'll just be a 10-minute video, but that's going to be one where I make it. And then every time that question comes up, I'm going to go, hey, here's a link. So 3 years from now, I need that to be the answer to that question. I just haven't had a full week to do that. The free time that I get is to record the audiobook for Michael Zuber. Your average man. Howdy. Hey, Dion, quick question. What's the difference between roommate agreement versus a traditional lease? So this is the way I've looked at that. The lease is generally between the person who owns the property and the person renting the property. A roommate agreement is usually the contract between the people sharing the living space. There can be a roommate agreement if the person owning it is renting rooms to someone else, but it's more of an agreement between the people that are living there than the people living there and the person who owns it if they're not there. There may be a more techno jargon way of looking at that, but that's how I've seen that. I don't use roommate agreements, but I do know people who do for when they're sharing space. How many do I have people who are renting as roommates? I've got one that has 3. I want to call them kids, but they're in their 20s, younger people living there. I don't think anybody else has roommates in my units. I have standard leases with everybody, but the roommates have a roommate agreement. And it's not like the one from Big Bang Theory that's 70 pages long that talks about everything. It's literally, this is the proportion of rent. This is, it broke down between them more so than anything to do with me. Khaled, howdy. I am following you from Mukilteo. Would like to connect. Cool. I put my email in the chat. I will put it again. Reach out. Mukilteo is a bit far from me. It's I used to deliver there a lot when I drove a semi to, what was it? The Mukilteo Albertsons was there. Really hard dock to get into. Pretty town though. Cool. Happy to connect. Chester. Jeremy, I haven't forgotten about reaching out to you on Facebook about using the VA loans to get started from at the Lumberjack Landlord Sunday stream. Nice. Maryland. Okay. MD, Maryland. Never would have got there. Like I said, went to school in America. Kedma, howdy. Can totally relate to the ordering a Coke with your meal. Nice. Yeah, that still feels weird, and I still don't even do it. Like half the time when I'm out, and I eat out all the time. Half the time it'll be like, oh, I'm gonna get a drink with my meal. Chester, gentle nudge about the neighborhood class video. Exactly. Jones, it was Shaq who said that. Cool, thank you. And it's funny. I'll try to remember that, but that's one of those things that it takes me saying like 3 or 4 times that I don't know it. Kind of like Charlie Munger. There was a quote that I love from Charlie Munger, but for 3 months I referred to him as Warren Buffett has this other guy he works with, and Warren Buffett says this, but his other guy said this other quote, and then I would say the quote. I know the quote, but it took me forever to remember Charlie Munger. That should have read, not all expensive properties have commensurate yield scaling. Yeah, that's right. So, but that's why I say I want to buy a more expensive property, but then I always put a caveat at the end, as long as the yield scales with it, and they don't always. So there are some places that are expensive where there is no yield. Some expensive properties plain old suck when it comes to rents. Yep. Jeremy, I currently have 3 properties leased for 3 years that the owners pay any HOA are comfortable with the sell. Perfect. Yeah, it's a great strategy. Biomatic, T-Mobile money gives you 1% on checking. Well, okay, interesting. So I know that there's some ones out there. A few years ago, there were 5 or 6 years ago, there were 3% savings accounts, and that made a difference. Now you can find ones that are 1%, but to me, the mental jumping through hoops to find all of those hasn't been worth it yet. And my goal is as that money is large enough for me to really worry about it, I want to find that next deal. This is the first time. Normally, what I do is I start saving and it hits an amount. So I just start slowly scaling up the properties on the MLS and my auto searches with my agents on what I look at. And then as soon as I find the deal that meets it, I just buy it. This is the first time I put my buying on hold to help my friend, and then I put my buying on hold to develop the down payment for a significantly larger property. So this is kind of a new thing. I would not have done it to this amount in the beginning. I would have wanted to get the house hack down as soon as possible. Aziz, howdy. Aziz Mansouri. Actually, know an Aziz Mansouri. I don't think it's the same guy. Maybe. What strategies have you found to be successful in real estate? If I recall, it seems like you primarily used house hacking. So I've used house hacking twice. House hacking helped save the money for buy and hold investing. I prefer to do 20 or 25% down conventional down payments on a buy and hold small multifamily. In my area, which is Tacoma to Olympia in Washington State, I'm able to, and not very often, I look at over 100 deals to find the ones that will get this return, but a 10% or better cash on cash return. I have 1 fourplex, 1 triplex, and 4 duplexes, and then a single family house that I had from before I was an investor. It was like before I was an investor, that was going to be the forever home. Buy the house, white picket fence to raise the kids in, right? It was like just a house, not an investment. It is now paid off and rented to Section 8 tenants, and I'm very happy with it. But the rest of mine are all small multifamily, and I've only house hacked 2 of them. So the other ones were purchased as investments. I like to save up the down payment and put it in. I have a VA loan available. I was in the Marine Corps. I've never used my VA loan because I like putting money down. I want to have some equity. One of the problems in 2008 is when people couldn't refinance because their adjustable rate went up, they didn't have equity. A lot of the foreclosures happened because people were borrowing 105% of the loan. They would borrow the loan and the closing costs, and lenders were letting it happen. No doc loans with no proof of income, no job, no assets, ninja loans. And then the adjustable rates would kick in. So I don't have adjustable rates. I don't have to worry about that. But I like having equity. When I first started investing, interest rates were 6 and 5.5%. So the more equity made cash flow a lot better. Now interest rates are on the 3 to 3.5. I may use my VA loan because it makes more sense to finance the larger amount because inflation is higher than the interest rate. But I would look at doing that now because I have properties and I have about 45% equity. I want to be 70% leverage, so I only have 30% equity. I want to get to 30% equity. That's the ratio I want to maintain. So I've got a whole bunch of, well, I might do the cash out refinance on the house to put the money to work, or I might buy my next property with a VA loan with no down payment. One of the really cool things that my daughter said, who's way smarter than I am, is it's really hard to make a decision when both outcomes are positive. So these are some choices I have to make, and all of them are a win. It's just which one is winning, or if that's a word. I am disappointment in my grammar. So for all your conventional loans, you do 25, done 20% down a couple of times, but it depends on finding the lender that's okay with that. I prefer to do 25% when I can. Yep. Rob, you can live in the boat on a lake much cheaper. So what? I'd have to look and see if there's lakes around here that I could do that on. My house, my single family house is on Lake Lawrence, but there's no liveaboards there. That's an idea. But I do like I don't know. It's just I live in the Puget Sound. I want to be able to get in the boat and go out, watch sunset. Like, yeah. But maybe is Mercer Island on a lake? Or is that in this sound? Not good with geography. Okay. CJ, see ya. Heading out. Thanks for the content. As always, catch y'all next time. Thanks for stopping by, CJ. Martin. Howdy. I remember your name, Baldavinos. Howdy, Dion. Do you write off all expenses on investment properties? No. I take all of depreciation because if you ever sell, it is assumed, the IRS assumes you took all depreciation. But I tell my CPA, I want to use enough write-offs to show a little bit of a loss, but still be bankable. I don't want to show that I have lost $50,000. I want it, and my write-offs can't count against W-2 because I'm not a real estate professional. So someone like Matt, the lumberjack landlord, who has Ashley, who is a real estate professional, can magically work that thing where the losses count against W-2. Go for it. Doesn't work for me. Don't have it, Ashley. And I'm not a real estate professional. So you do not have to take write-offs if you have an expense. You can, and you don't have to use your depreciation, but it's assumed that you did. So I have not. I want to carry a little bit forward each year just to be safe, but I don't want to show a big loss so that my lenders look and go, you're almost at a net zero on your properties every year. So when you buy the next one, as long as the rental income from that property, 75% of that rental income is at or above what your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance are, that's a zero change to your debt to income score. So Julie. Now I'm curious for the overshare. I forget what I was going to overshare. What was it? Oh, it's oversharing. The great thing about owning a boat, if you're a guy and you aren't seeing anybody, is people like to come over and visit, but nobody wants to move in. That's an overshare. Dome. Howdy. Hey, Dion, thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. I am also on my journey to financial freedom through rentals, but I am doing both residential and apartments. Awesome. Hey, more power to people doing apartments. I know there are people who do it successfully and have great luck at it, and it scales faster. Then there's a ton of reasons to do it. So if it's working for you, awesome. Yeah. Adam, what's the Munger quote? Okay. What was the Munger quote? Warren Buffett always preaches diversification, protect your assets. And Charlie Munger says, in order to get wealthy, the last thing you should ever do is diversify. You need to focus on one asset class and become a master of it until you become wealthy. Once you're wealthy, then you diversify to protect your portfolio. And every time he said it, Warren would go, wait, don't do that. I just said to diversify. And it makes total sense. If I invested in real estate and stocks and crypto and tried to start a business, I'd be chasing 4 rabbits and I would starve. I invested in real estate. I could have picked stocks. I could have picked a business and focused on just growing that business, right? But I picked real estate. Now that my portfolio is growing, at some point, I'm going to buy, so net worth, a little over 2 million. I want to buy 5 like actual physical bars of silver or gold or whatever. Like diversify to protect wealth. But if you diversify to try to gain wealth, you shoot yourself in the foot. So that was a butchered version of Munger's quote, but that's what I got out of it. Your average Matt. I asked the roommate agreement because I was told that I could do that with your situation. Cool. Yeah. If you could do that, that would be great. It's funny. A lot of people have roommates. A lot of people have roommates when they're in college or when they just move out of their parents, and they're totally fine with having other people help you pay someone else's mortgage. But as soon as we buy a property and we own the property, we don't want roommates anymore because we don't want somebody to help us pay our mortgage. We want somebody to help us pay someone else's mortgage. That's weird. Uh, your average Matt situation: a duplex only zoned for 2 families. However, the owner had converted the garage into studio. So, 2 things to consider when you have living space on your property that isn't zoned. First, if you ever go to sell, that's storage space. It's not going to count as living area or rental income. Second, if you ever have an unhappy tenant, they can report you to the county. And I don't know what steps your county could take, but each county is different. Um, so those are the things to consider. But a lot of people do convert areas to living space or build out a basement. It's just sometimes when you go for financing in the future or to sell in the future, that's not going to count as living space. Um, a friend was looking at buying, was 3 mobile homes on one property, and the first mobile home was all permitted and licensed. Neither of the other 2 were set up as an ADU, an auxiliary dwelling unit. So when he went to sell, it was 1 living structure and then 2 storage sheds who just looked like living places. So couldn't get the money. It had to be an all cash offer, which lowered the amount because they knew it wasn't bankable. Um, so that can work. It's just make sure you consider that. Your average Matt. The studio is not livable since it's only zoned for 2 families. I was told that I could still live in the studio garage since I'm technically still sharing a living space. Can you confirm this? All of my information is for entertainment value, and I don't give financial advice, but I would absolutely do that. They can't tell you where to live on your own property. They can tell you that you can't rent that space to someone else if that person complains to the county or if a neighbor complains to the county. But if it's where you're living, I would do that all day long. Again, entertainment value. That's why I put a little sarcasm in my voice so they know that it wasn't financial advice. Don't sue me, bro. Amanda, howdy. Do you look for deals in the Northeast Tacoma Dash Point area, or do you tend to stick south of Fife? Just curious. I would love to buy a place in Ruston. I just love Ruston, the whole area. It's the most city area I've seen. But most of mine are between Tacoma and south to Tumwater. So down to Tumwater, out in Spanaway, down in McKenna, out in Yelm. Like I'm pretty far out there. It works for me because I have the several economic drivers. There's a base, so I like being on both sides of the base. I've got renters from the base that like to live in the city life, and then I've got renters from the base who are from really far remote areas, and they're staying here, so they don't want to live near the city, so they're in McKenna. But I'm mostly south. I'm not north of in the Fife area. Your average Matt. I can email you more info on this. Currently, a blocker for me on closing and my first house app. Sure. I'll put my email again at the end when we're all done. Let's see if I can help. Chester, another place to consider traveling to in Russia is Sochi, where the Olympics were a few years past. Cool. I will definitely have to check that out. Yeah. Wyomatic, don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you. Appreciate that. Aziz, how did you pay one of your houses off before the 30-year term? Currently house hacking and don't know how I'd pay it off before 30 years. So house hacking, rented out the single family house, moved into an apartment. 2 years later, moved into a duplex, was house hacking. So I was saving $1,200 a month there, and the house was cash flowing. Then I bought a duplex that was cash flowing over $1,000 a month, and then I bought a duplex that was cash flowing over $1,000 a month. So I had 4 properties. And before 2016, most banks, large lenders, were limiting you to 4 mortgages. Some right now are limiting you to 4. Most will go to 10. Almost all will go to 10, but I've heard of somebody saying 4 was their limit. So I got to 4, and I thought banks are smarter than me. They've got a mountain of knowledge. There's some reason why they chose 4, and it was just the 2008 thing where a bunch of people lost houses. So I'm going to stay at 4. So I focused all the cash flow, all the money built for the next investment, every bit of overtime, every side hustle money I had coming in towards that. I was making $5,000 to $10,000 a month payments on that mortgage. So a little over a year to pay off this single family house. But it was every penny of cash flow. And again, it stretched out that frugalness one more year. And then once that house was paid off, the cash flow from it increased so much with the other rentals that I was making more from 4 properties than I was making when I was a police officer. And now I was house hacking. So I was making $100 more a month take home than when I was a cop, and I didn't have a mortgage. So it was like that was my first stage of financial independence. Not freedom, but independence. And then I just went back to saving, and it was 16, 17, 18, no, it was 17, 2 more years, and then I bought the fourplex. But that income snowball had kicked in, and I was saving at least, I don't know, 100,000 a year. And I was making $17 an hour 11 years ago. So those are huge numbers that I can't wrap my head around. It's when that income snowball kicks in that your life changes. So one of the reasons I want to do this content is those first 4 to 5 to 6 years are really hard because you can't see it. You're thinking, I'm saving 600 a month, I'm saving 1,000 a month. This is not really a big dent. I could just go spend this on a vacation. But 2 or 3 of those cash flowing assets, and then rent increases 2 or 3 years later when the mortgages either stay the same or I refinance 2 of them to a better rate, and all of a sudden the cash flow instead of $100 or $200 a unit is $630 a unit, and you have 16 of them. It's just after that 6-year point, it was just I still can't get my mind wrapped around of, instead of where's money going to come for food next month, it's what am I going to do with the money that I have next month? It's a huge mental shift. And my goal is to get as many people as I can to that point. Jeremy, nice overshare. Sailor life for the, trust me, it turns out, yeah, with 8 kids and several properties on land, Navy sailor, corpsman to the Marine, nice. Every Marine's best friend is the corpsman. We knew where all of you guys were. Actually, all of my vet friends who are sailors have tons of kids. No boats needed. Maybe that is the key after service. Maybe. Julie, Mercer Island is on the lake. You don't want to live there. No, okay. I know I don't want to live on Mercer Island either. I don't think I can. If I sold all my properties, I might be able to buy a shack on Mercer Island. Your average man. Thank you. Cool. Patrick, howdy. Hey, Dion, just dropped in. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge during the BiggerPockets bootcamp. Awesome. Glad it worked out for you. I'm hoping that they have me in more of those in the future. And here is an over. No, I can't overshare that yet. BiggerPockets news coming eventually. Rob, you got to go to Rio. What Rio? Rio's South America, right? If I go to South America, I'm going to Brazil. I want to meet Michael Jewell. One of the viewers, we've talked several times. But yeah, Rio. Sounds good. Know thyself first. Howdy. Namaste. Ni hao. Tony Carr. Howdy. Hi, Dion. Thanks for sharing your 10-year experience. Did you ever purchase a property without tenants? Did a seller ever tell you gross were at a higher amount than the actual? I have purchased, I prefer to buy I prefer to buy occupied properties, but I have bought properties that were vacant. So I've had some units that were empty. I've learned the lesson that you never believe estoppels, never believe what the selling agent says, never believe what's in the leases that the tenants have. An example is I went to buy a duplex and the tenant was paying a really good rent. And that made it cash flow where I want it, which is normally I buy it and it's too low and I got to use the binder method a couple months later, and then it gets to where I need it and I make my cash flow. The rents were where I needed them. And I made the offer. The tenant was there during the inspection. So I was doing a walkthrough with the inspector. And if I didn't have this 30-second conversation with the tenant, I never would have known. The tenant said, yeah, in our lease, we never really wrote this in there, but I didn't have any money for a deposit. So they just added a couple $100 a month for my deposit over the first year. So at the end of this, my rent's going to go down a couple $100. Well, that didn't work. That didn't work for me. And then luckily, it appraised $50,000 too low. The inspector found about $50,000 worth of work because there was a leak that had done all the trusses. That was the one deal, and I've got a video on my channel. The one time I've lost money and didn't end up with a rental, but was happy. Like I pulled out and was like, that was a good deal to bail on. It's the only one I've ever had an accepted offer on that I didn't end up buying. Yeah. Rio is Brazil. Like I said, went to school in America. Can't trust anything my teachers left in my brain. Hate my memory, but that's beautiful. So yeah, Rio in Brazil, that on my way. Capital of Brazil. Awesome. Translates to January River in Portuguese. So that's what got me with Colombia was a lot of the words were Portuguese Spanish instead of Mexican Spanish, or maybe it was Spain Spanish. I don't know. It's a Latin language is fascinating to me. And again, I just need exposure to it. Aldo, howdy. Is there an advantage of having tenants pay cash versus bank deposit or any other way of rent payment? I don't like to take cash because then I have to generate a receipt, and then I have to somehow make an electronic footprint of that transaction. I report all rents. It's one of the ways that you stay bankable is you could prove that you can take in rents. And I've still never paid any rental with depreciation and write-offs. I've still never paid any taxes on rental income or profit. So I report all the rents. I prefer, so I have a video on my channel called How I Collect Rents, 3 Things to Consider. And as long as it does 3 things. First, I want to make it easy on the tenant. So if I had a tenant who had to do cash, I could do cash and then do a written receipt. I've done it a couple times where I've had a tenant show up and say, hey, all the ATMs were done. I can't get the bank. My computer's not working. I just have cash and I took cash. Give them a receipt. But I like Zelle, Cash App, Venmo, Google Pay, Apple Pay, PayPal, ACH. I'll take a check and then deposit it with the app so that there is an electronic, because the second thing is I want an electronic paper trail. And the third thing I want is save me a trip to the bank. Yeah, the problem with the tenant that I have that every now and then pays me in cash, that gives me a bunch of $100 bills in my pocket. So I do my thing where I walk around and give away $100 to somebody, which it's not a bad thing. It's got to be wasteful on some level. So that's what I look at when I'm doing rent, receiving rent. Wyomatic, do you still think inflation or rates will drop? I forget what you said with Mike and Matt. So Mike and Matt have some good points, and the feds said they're going to raise rents. They said they're going to raise rates. But look at the demand that created. There were more transactions in December than in October, in the middle of the winter. And it's because people said, rates are going to go up. I better buy now before they do. So them saying they're going to raise rates doesn't mean they're going to. Matt and Mike, I still have a dollar bet with them. They think inflation is going to cause rates to go up because that's how you stop inflation from being so bad. And we did have high inflation. I totally get it. A lot of this inflation, though, is caused by bottlenecks in supply chain. And that doesn't mean the prices are going to come down. I just don't think we'll see as much inflation on those same numbers in the next year. Deflation terrifies the Fed. It makes it harder for them to pay their debts off. And we're $29 trillion in debt, and that's going up. So to fight deflation, I think rates will be below 3.5 in June of next year. And that's what our bet is. I still stand by it. I still think that the Fed's saying they're going to raise the rents is them saying, hey, let's create some demand in the market. And I don't know. But the way we talked about it in our video is the same thing. If you're in an area and the politics of your region are torn, you might end up blue tomorrow, you might end up red tomorrow. You don't know, right? If you run a business or you have rentals, you need to have a plan for both options. I have a strategy for if there is inflation, these are the actions I'm going to take. And if there's deflation, these are the actions I'm going to take. Have a plan for ways. Mike and Matt have been investing longer than I have. They're both Mike is more educated than I am. I think Matt's way smarter than I am. So they're probably right. But I have a plan both ways. And I do see that deflation is the bigger fear for the government, for the feds, than inflation is. Jake, howdy. What's up, Dion from Yuma, Arizona? I like Yuma. I don't think I went all the way to Yuma when I was looking for properties there. I was looking around Phoenix, Scottsdale, went to Glendale, Chandler, Mesa. I don't know that I went to Yuma. It's a bit far out from where we were looking. I do like Arizona. Chester, nearly 2,200 here. I'm going to get to Michael's course for about an hour before I hit the hay. Thank you always. Thanks for hanging out, Chester. Appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know how much longer I should go, but until the questions stop. Thank you. Rob, you will want to stay in Capabana. I almost thought that said capybara, which is my favorite animal. I want to have 2 capybara as our office pets. Got to figure out the licensure on that. Or Ipanema. Okay, I've heard that in some songs. However, if you're into driving, take a week in Buzios. So the really cool thing in Colombia was my friend was teaching English at a college there, and he was there for several years. So we had a guided tour, and I got to be the English speaking, come into the college and be the guest speaker for conversational English while I was there. But he knew where everything was. We went 6-hour car ride out into the mountains to these hot springs, and then we down to Cartagena and went out to Pirate Island, and like he knew where everything was. So it was really good to do that. And if I do go to somewhere like Brazil, I'm definitely going to want to know where to go. And it was really weird. So I went to Colombia, and my friend kind of said, "Hey, this is where we're going. This is where we're going. This is where we're going." We went to Thailand, and I didn't know anybody there. So me and my brother planned out our whole trip. And if you go to Thailand, don't do that. Every business in Thailand, every structure is a travel agency. You walk into a 7-Eleven, there is a nice person sitting at a desk that will sit there with everything on the wall behind that you can do. They will book the taxi, the airfare, the train ride, the boat ride, that whatever. They get it's all done in a few minutes to plan your next few days. So if you go to Thailand, just block out the time you're going to be there and then play it how it goes. So, Julie, do I speak Portuguese? No, I do not speak Portuguese. I like poquitos español, like very little Spanish. And when they mixed Portuguese in there, I think that's why the stop sign said pere instead of alto in Colombia, and some of the words tripped me up. But no, I haven't had the opportunity. David, howdy. Hey, Dion, how much rent property insurance do you recommend? Replacement versus market value? How much deductible? How much business liability? Multi-policy discount? Great 3 amigos topic sometime. Oh, thank you. So I am going to be doing an insurance video, but not today. I like to have $300,000 in slip fall coverage, so personal injury. I do full replacement of the building because I want to have the asset if there's a problem. I do not have insurance to cover lost rents. I've never seen that as a benefit. And my deductibles are as high as possible. That's the technical term, as high as possible. Some of them are at $10,000, some of them are at $5,000. In 2006, I had an insurance claim on my personal residence before I was an investor. For 5 years, no other insurance company would insure me, and my insurance rates on my house tripled. I don't want to have that experience when I have a portfolio of investment properties with insurance. So if there's going to be a claim on one of my properties, it's going to be for personal injury with like hospital time or a complete burn down of my properties. I do multi-policy discount. I go through Geico. And then once you have a certain amount, whatever you're comfortable with, I would add an umbrella policy. I pay $550 a year for $2 million in coverage. What happens is if you get sued on one of your properties and the injury goes, or the problem escalates above the 300,000 that you have on that property, it then goes to me, which the umbrella policy covers because all of the properties are named in the umbrella policy. So up to 2 million in coverage beyond the 300,000. That's what I'm comfortable with. Beto, howdy. Hi, what about when tenants send partial payment electronically? put it into, that's where you create an account, a holding account. So if you're ever going to go through an eviction, remember, receiving funds resets the start of the eviction. So they can give you $5 and you take it. But if you put it into an another account, then you call it a holding account, and you can prove to the court that you're not touching that money. It is sitting there and you're not accepting anything but a full payment or whatever payment arrangements your local municipality can work out with you. I have a friend I'm helping go through an eviction right now with their tenant. That's how. So if you get a partial payment with electronic, you put it into that holding because you're going to go through the eviction process. Don't take that money. Taking that money means that month doesn't count in any timeline that you're setting up for that eviction. Ian, howdy. Hey, Dion, what do you think about liquidating some IRA money to fund a duplex down payment? Thanks. I don't recommend putting your retirement accounts at risk if you're just starting out and you only have one or two rentals or you don't have any yet, because that's when we make our mistakes. Just like with a home equity line of credit, putting our personal residence at risk to buy a rental, I don't recommend in the beginning. Once you have the basics down and you know with confidence that when you buy a rental, you're going to get at least a 10% return or maybe better, or whatever your metric is, 7% is what some people shoot for, whatever it is, that or better, and you know confidently that you're going to get that, and you have a place to put that money to work. I emptied out my retirement accounts. I had like 80 something thousand dollars in there, but it was during COVID, and during 2020, you could take your money out and not pay the 10% penalty. So I would need to make sure that my deal was good enough. I would rather have the money in a rental than in a retirement account. But there is a use for money in a retirement account. You can borrow money against it. You can turn it into a self-directed IRA. You can take the time, learn dedicate the mental bandwidth to learning how to do those strategies. Or you can use your reserves, your retirement account as a reserve. If lenders require that you have $20,000 or $30,000 and you have $60,000 in an IRA, 50% of that counts as a reserve without having to take it out. That's a way to use that money without having to take it out, without having to save up that amount in reserves. So it's a case by case basis. I don't give financial advice. Legal disclaimer here. You don't read the disclaimer. This is just for entertainment value. I personally pulled it out because I knew I could put it to work. I put that money into a triplex that's getting me a 17% cash on cash return. Technically, I took the money out and lived on it, which was the COVID rule. What actually happened is I took the money out and lived on it. And the money that I would have been living on was put into a triplex. Don't sue me. Yeah, so it really depends on your case, the size of your portfolio, how much you have in the retirement, how much you have for reserves. I sometimes say, well, talk to your CPA and see what's best, but CPAs aren't always investors. Your agent is not always an investor. Your lender is not an investor. Sometimes they'll be the worst advice to get somebody from. Rob, they will helicopter money before they allow deflation. That is true. They will also lower rates. Germany went to negative rates to avoid deflation. Rob, Yuma, nice at the river. Okay, cool. Jake, getting expensive down here in Arizona. Good luck with your search. Well, I was looking then. I found some places, but that was 2018, 2019. I haven't looked recently. Now I'm looking in Washington and Idaho. So we'll see what I find. Diving, not driving. Exactly. Chester, actually scratch that. Brasilia is the capital of Brazil, but Rio used to be the capital from the late 1500s. Wow. I Googled it to double check. Have a great evening. Thanks, Chester. Take it easy. Well, what's that called? GTS. Google that stuff. Wyomatic. Hey, Colombian here. Nice. Hope you had a good time and you left with a good impression. I did. Colombia was amazing. There's the reason I want to go back to Colombia and Thailand is because of the people. Thailand, I love the islands. I love scuba there. That was great. There were 35-foot whale sharks you could play with. But Colombia, the people were just, everyone had a good time. Everyone was there to have, nobody was, that was great. Yeah, so definitely a good impression with Colombians. My friend who was teaching there married his friend from Colombia, and now she lives here. She worked at our school for a while, and now she actually teaches at, I think, high school level. She's either teaching English as a second language or Spanish, but hopefully she's enjoying her time here too. Nakadon. North Colorado Don Roberts. Tell me about how expensive it is here in Phoenix. I know Phoenix is getting expensive, knock it on, but I'm in Yuma. Phoenix is getting tough price wise. Yeah, it is. But Phoenix is like Los Angeles. It's hard to find a cash flowing property in Los Angeles, but drive up to Lancaster or Palmdale. You're still in LA County. You're just not in Los Angeles. Go to Phoenix, but go out past Chandler, southern side of Chandler, where they're developing down there. There's whole cities going on. East of Glendale, there's an entire city infrastructure being put in to make a chip building city. Like concentric circles go out to find that place where the price starts to make sense. Knock it on. I live in Arizona, but invest in Colorado. Nice. Cool. We are coming up on the 3-hour mark, and some of you have been here a while, and I really appreciate it. So every Tuesday, 4 p.m., we come here, answer the questions. Happy to do this, hoping that the information helps. I definitely don't know everything. I'm still learning. I still learn when I talk to Matt and Mike, or like when we're doing their videos. I got a notepad next to me. I just want to share what I figured out so far and hope that it helps. And I know my lane. I can't tell you how to do a flip. I can't tell you how to do the BRRRR method. I can tell you why. I haven't done either of those. I can't tell you anything about stocks other than why I don't invest in them. I don't know how they work. I cannot give you relationship advice. Parenting, I can help with that. But I'm going to put my email in the chat one more time. And if you ever have specific questions, you're not comfortable sharing in a group format like this, happy to help if I can. I don't have a coaching program. I don't charge. And if you ever send me an email and I don't answer you within like a day or two, send it again. I get a bunch. And if I missed it with something, it wasn't my intent. I hope you guys have a great week, and catch the Three Amigos on Thursdays. We record in the morning or noonish, and then Mike releases them throughout the evening. So every Thursday, there's videos coming out with us. There's one other thing. Oh, if you're on Facebook, please join the group, the Three Amigos of FI. So the Three Amigos of Financial Independence, but send a request, join that. All of us are in there sharing information with each other. It's a free group, doesn't have to come with any course or anything. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.